Let me start officially, meneer Ernst Van Zyl, baie dankie dat jy hier ons kom besoek het aan die Penuel show. I'm honored to have you. I don't know how many times we've sat now. We've sat here, we've sat on the virtual Mkuku.
I've seen many studios where we've had interviews. It's been interesting.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate you, bro. I won't lie. I was nervous about our sit down today. I actually realized I was nervous because we're meant to be having a debate. And I know you were like, look, let's have a robust discussion because that's more fruitful. But I know the topics that we're meant to discuss today are very triggering. So I maybe this is my disclaimer that if either of us lose our cool today, people must understand it's emotional topics. And I have to try on my side to try and represent the other side, even if I may not agree with it, just for the sake of robust engagement and discussion. Before we delve in, how have you been? How's AfriForum? How's family? Are you good?
Well, a lot has happened since we last spoke. It was last year, early last year, I think, when we recorded that episode. Since then, the big things that have happened. Firstly, I got married.
Hey! Congrats! Congrats and condolences to your single life. Shame.
Well, thank you very much.
Congrats to you and your wife.
Yeah, no, I'm very happy. Yeah. And the other thing that happened is I got promoted. So I got
promoted. Hey, we're getting more money. Except since AfriForum owns the Penuel. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah, well,
congrats on your
lot
promotion.
More responsibility. Yeah. And so I'm now the head of public relations at AfriForum.
That's dope.
But that's the two big things. And your show has also been just going strength to strength. You've been having 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 view episodes. I mean, that's growth.
We're trying. We speak about this regularly, and it's something myself and Debza spoke about that after we sat down. And I was like, look, we normally do about 30,000, 40,000 views. And you were like, no, we'll hit 100,000. And I'm like, look, we're not really chasing views, but look, 30,000 views would be great. You're like, listen, have faith. And after you hit 100,000 very comfortably, I think we're now close to about 240,000 views. One of the things Debs and I spoke about was Afrikaner confidence and the belief. And also your belief in yourself and your belief, I guess, in the community that you guys operate in, to be like, don't worry. Our people support what we do. We know that this message is very powerful and very strong and people will watch. I was pleasantly surprised by the number of especially older black men who are like, I saw you with that AfriForum boy. When I started watching, I got angry, man. But then by the time I was finished, I was like, no, man, this was a really, really good sit down. And that's a very sharp young guy. We have been able to influence people's minds and perceptions, and that makes me very happy. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you for that.
Well, I want to thank you for creating the platform, because I mean, the response I got post that interview was really, really positive. I mean,
that's why you got the promotion?
No, a lot of stuff went into that. But the thing about that episode is if you go into the comment section, usually the rule of thumb is you don't check the YouTube comment section. Even if it's positive content, there's going to be someone to turn it into something negative or something toxic. But that wasn't the case in this comment section. Yeah, there's going to be a handful of people. But I expected a lot more divisive debate, a lot more getting stuck on stuff in the comment section. And the overwhelming majority of people were just, this was an insightful conversation. Didn't necessarily agree with everything, but it was done in a interesting manner. It was civil. It was not a shouting match, and it made people think. And I mean, that's the point that we ended that conversation on, was that whole idea of entertaining an idea without accepting it. Listening to someone state their case doesn't mean now you have to adopt that case and you have to start believing it, but you at least have to give another person that chance. And those conversations do well. That's why I knew this episode is gonna reach at least 100,000, because that episode, in my view, at least in my humble view, did have the potential for it, because it was an honest, straightforward conversation between two people, I hope, from both sides, talking from their heart, not just pretending to be something they're not.
No, thanks a lot, bro. I think you guys gave me license. And look, I'm aware of how the real world works. And in the real world, people want a reference and they want to vet you. And I would be naive to assume that getting into spaces like Orania, maybe having certain white people, certain Afrikaner people come up to me and recognize me, I would be naive to not assume it's because people have seen me sit with you. people have heard me speak about AfriForum, of which those were not the reasons why I did it. But I appreciate the fact that, I've earned like a small little license, even when I go watch rugby games as well, people are like, hey, jy stay oukie van TikTok. And I'm like, sure, I think so. So I appreciate it.
But it's always so positive comments, always supportive comments. Yeah, that's great. That's amazing.
Thank you. How's the work at AfriForum going in general? Not just your work, but the organization?
Well, when people ask me that question, I always answer busy, but in a good way.
Yeah.
I'm keeping busy with the stuff that I find meaning in, that I find energizing. I mean, that's where you want to be. Yeah. That your work doesn't drain you, but your work gives you energy. Doesn't mean that it's not work. Doesn't mean that you're not putting effort in and working. It's not a holiday. It's not a hobby. But at the same time, you enjoy many aspects of it, and it gives you strength. And I've never had a morning, I told my wife this the other day, I never had a morning where I felt, I don't want to go into work today. I'm just not less for this. And I've never had that experience. Maybe somewhere in the future. But I put that down to the nature of my work, and being in Afrikaans, you'd say roepingswerk, your calling, and being in line with your calling. I think that when you're in that zone, in that space, it's being busy with stuff that you like being busy with.
No, that's beautiful. Any highlights from last year as an organization that maybe stand out for you?
Well, I think firstly the expansion of our membership total to now 315,000, all-time high. And probably also the expansion of our neighborhood watch network to 172 now nationwide. My presentation at the UN at the end last year on a personal note. And maybe what else stood out really from last year, I would say probably just all the success stories, having success stories every week to share. And I mean, you can go check it out for yourself. As I told you last time, and just believe what I say, go check out what I say. And when I tell you there's success stories every week, there are success stories every week. And go check out the AfriForum website. It translates to English completely. You go under news and then press statements. You see what's happening every week. I want to say every day, but sometimes there's a day with a press statement that's not necessarily a success, maybe just a new campaign. But there's definitely at least one success every week, if not more. Yeah. And that's, I think that would be my highlight. It's a lot more about the organization than what I'm doing personally. But being part of it it's very nice.
The 172, what are those branches? Are those employees?
Those are 172 neighborhood watches, so security or safety structures. So
these are like branches of neighborhood watches around the country?
Yes.
Cheers.
And I think they are manned by about 11,000 volunteers.
11,000?
That don't earn a cent from it.
They literally just volunteer to go around the neighborhood and
keep it safe. Yeah, but they work together with SAPs. They do it within the confines of the law. If you break the law, you can't be part of a neighborhood watch. Sure. And AfriForum has a very strict discipline focus where our neighborhood watches need to be highly disciplined. And they need to keep within the confines of the law. And on local level, we have very good cooperation with the police. They're just happy to have some assistance. And they can take all the credit. If the crime goes down in the community, we don't care. The AfriForum wants the safer community. We don't necessarily want the credit. The police station can take the credit.
But that would be annoying, though.
That's
because that's politics now.
Yeah, well, it's the
if you look at these neighborhoods here, crime has gone down. So well done to SAPs. And you're like,
I always tell people ask me sometimes, but when you guys fill these potholes, when you do these neighborhood watches, make communities safer, you paint street signs, think the government should be doing, isn't that giving the government a free pass? Isn't that making them look good? At the end of the day, you have to think about it in this way. What is the key thing that you want to achieve? Is your key goal to make the government look bad? Is your key goal to hurt the government, to smear their image with mud?
Sure.
Or is your goal to make your communities cleaner, safer, better?
Yeah.
I would say the latter. I would say your goal should be to make your communities cleaner, safer, better. Not necessarily making your primary goal to hurt the ruling party or the government to make them look bad. Then you're just a political party. And the political parties often prioritize making the opposition or making the government look bad rather than actually bringing about a change. And that's when it comes to bringing about change, there's a principle there's very difficult. I even struggle with this, but it's the principle of doing the right thing even when nobody is looking. There's a great Afrikaans poem about it by C.A. Langenhoven that writes about the the man that does the right thing even when nobody is there to see, the man who tells the truth even in the presence of the devil that's tempting him to lie. That's where a man is tested, when you are on your own, where you can do the wrong thing and nobody will know, or you can do the right thing and nobody will know. That's where you're really tested, not when you're in front of the cameras or when the media is there or when you have a photo op. Then it's easy to do the right thing. Doing the right thing when nobody's there, when it's just you, that's very difficult. But that's what we need people to do.
It's a conundrum, man. So you have a situation where the Springboks win the Rugby World Cup again. Shout out to the Springboks. And then
keep riding that wave.
And then the president goes along with his people to, and as someone watching from outside, you're like, no, man, there's something they're doing right in that country. Because I'm listening to you talking about not necessarily making the government look bad. They do that well on their own, but moving out of the way so that people can see what they for. Because I understand the importance of doing the right thing in your community and being like, look, I know there are people paid to do these things, and they're not doing them, or there's corruption, or they're not doing it the right way. We will do the work. Volunteer out of pocket, etc. But do we not then, again, you said siya langenhoven.
Siya langenhoven, yeah.
Do we not become complicit when we do the work they're meant to be doing? Because this is the conundrum. It's, we'll do the work, we'll win the World Cups, Bafana will do well at AFCON. We will literally build great things. And we're doing it despite government's failures. But now as we do that, we are giving them a license to be around for longer versus someone saying, I know you want to do the right thing, but the more important thing is we need to get rid of these guys, or at least expose how bad they are. And we'll still do the work, but you almost want to be like, look, I'm filling a pothole. I want to let you guys know that government didn't do this. We're doing it. That government is wrong. They were meant to do this. Let's not give them a free pass. I don't know. That conundrum. Because you become complicit in keeping them around. The more good work you're doing, the more you reduce crime, the more we build our own institutions, and it's almost like it's okay, then they can stay because clearly everything is okay.
So yes, in the short term, that's absolutely a legit thing. And I think it's definitely a criticism or a critique or a worry or a concern when it comes to these things. But I would add to it, in the long term, what you're doing is you're becoming state-proof. We talked about it a little bit last time. You're taking on responsibilities and you're achieving two things. Firstly, maybe you've been convinced all this time your community can't do this thing. You can't take this responsibility. It's always only the government can do this. Until the day you actually start doing it and you realize, at the moment, I can't do it at the capacity of the government, but I can do a small part of it. And then you expand and do more and more and more. So the first one is building that confidence and realizing, but you can actually do a lot of this stuff. And then from that confidence, secondly, comes the ability to be able to stake a claim. We can say, well, we've proven now that we can do this. Now we are taking over this responsibility and saying we don't need the government to do this anymore. Now suddenly you don't have to have the government, be dependent on the government for this type of service delivery or that type of cleanup or this type of security or this type of water or electricity. Small bits, but it starts with building that confidence in the long term, being able to know as a community, but we can actually handle this. And that's what it's going to do in the long term. So in the short term, yes, you're making the government look better. But in the long term, you're making yourself more confident and you're taking on more responsibilities and learning a lot in the process. You're gaining all these skills in regards to doing this. A good example would be with any type of service delivery, like servicing infrastructure, let's say filling a pothole. There's a right way and a wrong way to fill a pothole. But if you're doing it the first time, maybe you're not going to do it correctly. But then people are going to help you and say, maybe do it like this, here's the correct way. Soon you're going to be an absolute master. You're going to be a boss with filling potholes. And then you're going to be able to say, well, my community now knows. You disseminate that information around and that skill on how to fill a pothole. Suddenly you've created a sustainable community that at least with this one type of service delivery can do it for themselves. And then you say, well, what else can we do? You challenge yourself. So, well, what else? If we can do this, what else is there that we've been thinking all this time, been convinced that this is the domain of the government? We should not be even trying because we as normal people can't do it. So in the long term, you as a community win. In the short term, the government wins a little bit. And just a final note there, you said now about telling everyone, hey, we did this, not the government. The community will know. They'll see who's in the street. You're not walking there with government regalia on and showing you're wearing your fallies, you're wearing your jeans and t-shirt, you're wearing your get dirty clothes that we all have when you paint or when you do something, those clothes that you can wear when you're working. You're wearing those clothes. People can see you're from the community, you're part of the community. And they will know. You don't have to put up a sign or a banner saying, we did this. People will see. Especially with something, if you're there in the street and people look out the window and they say, I know that guy. I see him. I know him. And that's good. I'm gonna start supporting these types of initiatives. So don't worry. Trust that the right people will notice without you taking a megaphone and screaming announcing it.
I have a few notes here. I'm not being rude and busy responding to WhatsApp. So I'm taking notes. Maybe in the future I'll have like a pen and pad if people don't mind. I want to give a shout out to David Ansara, the CEO of the Free Market Foundation. I sat with him here. He's got a nice concept and he said it's not his. I think he took it from Sakalicha, I think. State proofing, various things that people can do to depend less on the state. And I think it's important for almost everyone to hear that. And maybe a challenge to myself, and maybe, if not me, anyone who's going to be watching this, to go and watch David Ansara's speech at the Rand Club or listen to our conversation and maybe translate some of those points in their own languages so people can hear the things they can do. When you speak about Neighborhood Watch, I have to speak about Ian Cameron and Action Society and the patrolling work they've been doing in the Western Cape. Exposing government. So he's not just keeping quiet. He actually calls out Bheki Cele and exposes the government for some of their failures. I think that's very important. And then I want to make this last point. The community will know. That is something very, very powerful. And it happens to be something that hit me like a ton of bricks in the last couple of weeks. The community will know, they will see. They know that I go to church with this guy. They know that our kids go to the same school. It is one of the things that opposition parties in this country are not getting. It's one of the reasons why the ANC is still in power. It hit me like a ton of bricks. And I don't know if it's a challenge for AfriForum, probably not AfriForum, but organizations like AfriForum. I went to a funeral, one of my cousins, Ace, passed away, rural KZN. I was at the funeral, I'm there, and one of the people in the program was an EFF spokesperson. They came there, maybe like 10 of them in their red t-shirts, and they came and they spoke about him. He was an EFF member, he was proud, they're pushing us the EFF, they want to get the country back, but they're here to lay their brother to rest. It was a very special moment for me, especially with the conversation I'd had with a guy called Dan Corder. And Dan Corder had said on a platform I sat with him.
Yeah, I listened to that.
Did you listen to it? Where he was saying the ANC, and he said it's the only, which is not true, but he was saying the ANC is the only political party that has a political machinery across South Africa. Part of this is because they've been around very long. Another one is probably they've been able to raise a lot of money. And then, the legacy of being the face of the party that overthrew the apartheid government. A few weeks thereafter, I meet up with a friend. I was at the airport in East London. And he's like, bro, I need to tell you something. I was in deep rural Eastern Cape. And you drive for 2 hours on gravel road to this place. He was going to a funeral as well. And he's like, the number of ANC people that were there, sending their condolences, their sympathies and speaking. And I'm like, it's weird you say that because I was at a funeral but it was this thing of the community will know that I think parties like the DA and maybe others, if they are serious about being a majority party, serious about having visibility in townships and maybe not suburbia. People on the ground when they vote will remember the people that were at the funerals, that were at the weddings, that they go to church with. When I got a job in municipality, when my brother got a tender, whether he's corrupt or not, etc., etc. And when it's time to vote, this is now outside of social grants and RDPs, because those are normally what we speak about. But look, the ANC, social grants, RDPs, that's why they vote for them. And you're like, but that's stupid. They're destroying the country. Sometimes it's actually that emotional. We've never seen the DA at our funeral. My mother passed away, and the people that came to comfort us and brought biscuits and tea were EFF people. When my brother was getting married, the people that were there celebrating with us were EFF people. And you're like, maybe I'd become a bit detached living in the suburbs to be like, okay, maybe I'm missing some of these things. And you're raising this because, and I was listening to the conversation we had in Oranje with Meneer Karel Boshoff, where he was speaking about the idea of a community of communities, South Africa. And it's the people that are doing the work in the community in the long run are always going to rise to the top like cream. And we need to go back to communal community work. And anyone, if we're speaking politically, which I know you don't want us to speak about and don't like us speaking about, and I understand, if anyone is actually looking to really, really dethrone the ANC or challenge them, including some of the more seemingly white parties, you're going to have to get on the ground. You're going to have to get your hands dirty and you're going to have to be visible in front of the people. They may not like you. They may think you're racist or you represent an agenda, but they'll be like, but they were there. When we were protesting, they were there. When we had issues, they were there. And some of our neighbors, black, colored, Indian, white, it doesn't matter. These are some of the people in my township. My black neighbor who helped fill the pothole, who's doing neighborhood watch. Yeah. He's a DA guy. He's a Freedom Front Plus guy. So I can hate them, but they're volunteering at schools. Yeah, I just wanted to make that point.
No, I think it's a absolutely critical point. And just to elaborate there on not talking about really party politics. It's not that I don't want to. It's just, especially in a year like 2024, where it's an election year, I see a lot of irresponsible rhetoric and conversations going on where people are elevating. Elections are important. You'll never see me telling people, write it off. Your vote doesn't matter. I'll never tell people that. But people are elevating an election to this is make or break. If your party or your politician doesn't win or get growth in this election, it's the end of the world. Certain parties are literally call it the second 1994.
Yeah. 2024 is our 1994.
But everyone forgets that before every single election, that is the rhetoric. In 2019, this was the most important election since 1994.
Sure.
2014 was the most important election since 1994. 2009 was the most important election since 1994. And I can guarantee you 2029 will be the most important election since 1994. And I just want to stay clear from that type of rhetoric because it builds so much, it puts all your people's eggs in one basket. And they think it convinces people that elections are the only way towards change. And that I really want to make this clear that people don't misunderstand. Elections are not a way to change. They can be an avenue to change, but part of multiple ways of achieving change.
Yeah.
I think it's very reckless and irresponsible to frame them as the only way.
Yeah.
Because let's say you convince now millions of people that if this election their party does not win, then it's the end of the world, then nothing will change, or things will get worse. Now that happens in the election, what are those people going to do? They're going to be completely hopeless. They're going to write off the entire system and say, well, there's no way to make any difference. I'm just going to go lock my doors and sit in my home and try to survive because now it's the end of the world.
And it's been happening.
It's happening. That's the type of mentality.
People are not voting
because
they're losing faith in the system.
Yeah. But it's because of this type of irresponsible rhetoric of people building up every single election as the most important one and convincing people that elections are the only way to bring about change. Yeah. So that's why I say, go vote, go support your party, but do something more. We can't live in a country where people think, and there are generally people that think this, that once every 5 years, you go stand in a line for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on where you go vote, maybe an hour, and then you go make your little X, and then that was your contribution to the community. You've done your part. You go back, crack open a beer, pat yourself on the back, say, "Yo, Penuel,
I did it, boy. I voted. Check my thumb.
I did my part." The post social media picture, very, very important. So now people get lulled into this illusion that they're doing their part. They're bringing about change. I'm like, you did the bare minimum. Like I said, don't write it off. Go vote. Yeah. But understand you're doing the bare minimum. There are other things you need to be doing. You need to be seeing, are there organizations in my community making a difference? Go support them. Are there individuals in my community that are trying to make it a better place, that are trying to bring about change outside party politics? Go support them. You don't even, let's say you don't have the money to support them. Well, then at least go talk to them and say, how can I help in any way? We talked about this last time. Can I volunteer 30 minutes this week towards
that's
your...
the note I just put down now, yeah.
People, when you're convinced that elections are the only way and making your little X is your sacrifice, that's the major sacrifice that you're making. You're not going to do that. You say, I already voted. Why should I go now do something more? Why should I go out of my way to do more? Well, I want to put the hard truth on the table that people need to start realizing they're doing the bare minimum and there's a lot more they should be doing. But as Flabase always says, you do what you can with what you have. I'm not expecting, I think last time we talked about this as well, not expecting people to now start donating all their life savings to good causes and quitting their job to become a philanthropist. I understand everyone has financial limits, time limits, responsibility limits, everything. But you do what you can with what you have, even if that's a little bit. But we can't keep going on like this where you just wait every election, big do or die. This is the moment now. Doesn't go your way, and then for the next few months after the election, you just hear people moaning about it's all over now. There's no hope, and people genuinely become hopeless, and I don't want to see that.
I sat with the leader of the ACDP, the African Christian Democratic Party, Reverend Kenneth Mishwe.
It's on my list. I still need to get to it.
One of the things he raised, which some people have raised before, we have a Bill of Rights in South Africa, and we don't speak enough about our responsibilities. I have the right, but what is the responsibility that comes with it? And look, maybe I'll credit him with this, but I think it was maybe my idea, but we'll give it to him. The idea of creating a Bill of Responsibilities that would maybe even be included in a constitution when it gets revised. That here's your Bill of Rights, but for you to enjoy these rights, here's the Bill of Responsibilities. One of them could be to vote. And I normally tell people there are three major ways to contribute. Or three major ways to vote, rather. Let me put it even better. The one is voting, obviously, with your pen and putting across. That's the one way. The other one is voting with your money. Who are you spending your money with? Because I can tell you now, the people that make the most money kind of get to choose which politicians get to even compete. So who are you giving your money to? If you believe in community as an example, and your community has high unemployment, who are you buying from? And the people you're buying from, are they investing in your community? Are they creating jobs? Are the people in the businesses you buy from actually people from your community? We don't have jobs, but every little bit of money we get, whether it's a grant or someone works, you're going to a business owned by, it could be anyone. Could be a foreigner, could be a South African, could be a white person, black, colored, Indian. They may not even live in your community. They don't care about your community. All their workers are not from your community, but you're like, we don't have jobs. So who are you voting for with your money? And then who are you voting for with your labor? Because again, I set up a Buy Black movement a couple of years ago before I became a non-racialist, became Nelson Mandela. And one of the things I realized is the idea of spending money in black establishments will destroy a lot of jobs. That's a reality. Let's buy from Maponya supermarket. But now all your family members that work at ShopRite, Woolworths, Pick n Pay are going to lose their jobs, number one. Number two, a lot of our family members that do have jobs, a lot of their pensions are invested, especially via the PIC, in a lot of what we call white monopoly companies. So sometimes our labor makes certain people rich, whether we like them or not. You could like them. I like Patrice Motsepe. So I'm working in a company where I don't give him any money. I don't vote for whatever political party he funds or he believes in. But with my labor, I give him strength. I give him power. And that's where things like volunteerism come in. So where are you voting? How are you voting with your labor? And maybe I'll add a fourth one now, which maybe I'll add moving forward. Your voice. How are you voting with your voice? We've got platforms, we've got social media. What are you saying here? Because to what you're saying about the noise, it becomes a collection of all the noise. And on Twitter in particular, there are a lot of EFF supporters. You run any poll, they win 60% of the elections on Twitter. When you criticize Julius Malema on Twitter, they go in for you. So are you using your voice responsibly? Because if other people are like, no, we disagree, and comfortably so, all of a sudden the narrative changes. I will steal this, but I'm going to say it to your face so that people are like, I didn't do it behind your back. I'm going to steal this concept of 1 hour of community service.
You can take it.
It's one of my biggest takeouts and highlights from our last sit down. The idea that I don't have money, I don't have anything of substance, I'm not a big voice, maybe I don't even speak much, but I have a bit of time. I have hands, I have feet. So within my community, not far somewhere where it's fashionable, within my community, just walk around, pick up papers, go and see if there's a school event happening. I pick up papers, I ask, sorry, do you need someone to look after the hot dog stand? Can I help park cars? Is there anything the school needs? Go to your local church. Sorry, is there anything this church needs? I see your grass. Can I cut the grass? Can I do the garden? And just volunteer 1 hour. 1 hour a week. It could be something as silly as I volunteer by taking a walk. It's exercise. But in that, I look for problems, potholes, leaking pipes. I carry a little plastic bag, so I pick up some dirt, and that's my contribution. You're like, thank you. So I'm going to steal it, and I'm going to tell people, listen, from me to you, please volunteer. No, but I think I'll always reference. So I wanted to say that, man. Thank you so much. And the bill of responsibilities and the doing for self and the understanding that and the teaching of people that politics is not the only way. Break your mind out of that. Politics is not the only way to bring about change and to uplift your community.
The finance bros always talk about diversify your portfolio. But diversify your means to change.
Sure.
Diversify the paths you're following to bring about change. I think that's very important. Sure. We live in a fast food era where not just the food, but the ideas as well. Everything needs to be a simple one-way solution to everything. You can't have a complex solution. You can't have multiple solutions or try multiple things. It needs to be a one-way to fix everything. And we need to move away from that. We need to move towards having multiple ways in which you bring about change. Like I said, diversify that change portfolio. And what you're describing there is doing that. Don't write off everything else and say, this is my strategy for bringing about change. So I'm going to incorporate this new strategy for change into my portfolio for change already. That's how you're going to make a difference. And that's unfortunately what happens a lot in online discourse, is that everyone has their idea of this is how you bring about change, and there's no other way. So when you say another way, now you're telling me my way is stupid or my way is not going to work. No, I'm just saying here's another way that you can consider. You can maybe even do this in tandem with your strategy. But unfortunately, we don't live in a time where that's very fashionable to say. Our time needs quick answers, simple answers. But we need to be the difference and go against that and say, no, sometimes the answers are complicated and sometimes the strategies are multifaceted, not just one road to get there.
Thank you. Now we have to start the hard stuff now. I'm going to sit up and...
we ease people into the pool now.
They didn't know that this was coming. I've written a couple of points of things I want us to have robust discussion, maybe debate on. I wanted us to speak about my trip to Orania, whether you want to or not. If you're still smiling with me at the end, maybe we'll speak about it. What made me cancel my membership at AfriForum, which is also linked to farm murders and white genocide, which is also somewhat linked to what happened on Twitter with Elon Musk, Julius Malema, and then the EFF celebrating 10 years, and the Dubuli Bunu chant, shoot the Boer. I'd written other notes here, but these ones are not important.
If you don't mind, let's start with the AfriForum point.
Sure.
I can talk about the Orania one as well, but seeing as I don't represent them, I feel like my insights would be more valuable. Let's see if there's still time for it. We'll definitely get to that one.
Sure.
I really enjoyed that conversation. I'd like to talk to you about that as well. But I think
you and US.
Yeah, you and US. That was one of my favorite interviews of the year. Not of your interviews of the year, just
Jeez, thank you so much. No, it's definitely not me. It must be US.
No, I was
so
rushing
shout out to US.
No, I was rushing to listen to that. But no, if I just wanted to listen to US, I'll send him a voice note and say, US, send me an hour voice note. Give me your thoughts. So no, it was the combination. What you brought there to the table was really great. But yeah, we can talk about that if you want, and I'm more than willing. But I think we should start with the AfriForum one because that's who I represent, and I want to get that.
So I don't want insights on Orania. I just wanted us to chat about the trip, some of the things that came out for me. If we don't get to it today, we can speak about it any other time. Things that stood out. I don't know if you've visited Orania.
I've visited multiple times.
Some of the things that maybe stand out for you. I saw a lekker AfriForum sign there by their healthcare space.
Yeah.
Do you know the name?
Yeah. It's
on
this
something
new, it's this
centrum.
new beheerkamer or like control. It's a medical center that they built there.
It is a
basically.
medical
It
center.
has a very fancy Afrikaans name, but
It
even
does have a
it's
fancy Afrikaans
escaping
name.
my thoughts now.
I must fix my Afrikaans, man. Then I'd be like, yeah, what's
Hey, even me, I can't remember it.
So maybe we'll chat about that.
Yeah.
So I made a video. Let me take it a step back. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I've been a fan of AfriForum's work for many years. And even when I set up the Buy Black movement, it was inspired by, and I was very open about it to the guys who joined at the time, that I'm inspired by some of the work AfriForum is doing. Every now and then on Twitter, Facebook, AfriForum trends, and then some black person's going to be like, imagine if we did the same. If 100,000 black people put in this much every month, we'd have this much to get land and schools and whatever. So I was like, look, let me do something about it. Been a fan for a very long time, understanding the multiple layers of what AfriForum is and what it stands for. And I was never, when I joined as a member, it was never with any malicious intention. It wasn't a little black boy trying to infiltrate this Afrikaner establishment. It was literally, I was like, I'm a fan. When the Senzo Meyiwa case came out and you guys offered support and some of the other work at the time you were trending, I was like, no, man, you know what? Let me stop. I believe in what these guys are doing. I'd like to contribute. And again, not just money, but my voice. Many people probably thought many things about it then and probably even still now. And I'm a sellout, of course. I'm a puppet, going to be the next Cyril Ramaphosa. I can imagine maybe some skeptical white people probably thinking, no, this looks like some gimmick. This guy's probably up to something. Then I sit with you, maybe I visit Oranje. It's like, oh, this guy's up to something. Just watch him. Maybe he was sent by someone. Cool.
Oh.
But I wanted to say it proudly also because I've met Black AfriForum members. And I wanted people to know they are Black and colored AfriForum members. They may not speak about it, but it's also not something you go and shout because it's not that type of organization. Hey guys, listen, I've got my AfriForum membership number. I've made it. It doesn't do anything for you. You don't put it on your CV. You know, it's a contribution to an organization. Like Gift of the Givers, like Action Society. But I said it. I wanted to say it. I wanted to own it. And 50-50, I really appreciated the conversations. Many Black people wanted to know why. And even though you guys didn't pay me, and I should invoice you, I referred a lot of people to your website, unpacking what AfriForum does. And some people are like, hey, I didn't know. And you're like, you're welcome. It's good to acknowledge your ignorance and to learn and to be like, I didn't think it was like this. All I knew was the old apartheid flag and what. You're like, it's and the Julius Malema and Khwezi case. Like that's not what they're about. And then to inspire some other people, whether it's Afrikaans people to be like, maybe I should join AfriForum, or other people to be like, maybe we should start our own thing, or other people to be like, okay, we don't have to start anything, but we can do some of this work. These people are doing it. Why not us? They work with Solidarity. They've built their own institution. It's possible without government. So that's why I did it. It's become one of my labels now. Even when I say things about the EFF, you're an AfriForum member, shut up. Then I left. And when I left, I made a video. And then again, someone else might be like, he's making a video because there's some malicious intent. He wanted to join AfriForum so he could be like, they are racist. I'm leaving them. It's like, bro, shut up. This was some weird social experiment. It's like, no. I am a human being. I'm having a human experience in my life. I am doing things, trying things. They work, they don't work. I may have left as a paying member, but that does not mean I no longer like the organization. I don't believe in the organization. I still very much believe in AfriForum and almost all of the work that you do. There's some of the work that you do that I don't believe in, and it's mostly because of my values. And this could apply to anyone really. I made a video and the video went out, and I remember you were upset. And you were like, bro, I don't understand what's going on. We should speak. And I was like, look, I never joined AfriForum because of you. So I don't need to report to you. But, as someone that I've met and that I respect very highly, I understand why it's like, we could have spoken about this. Whether you leave or not, doesn't matter. But just to let me know, etc. And I'm like, cool. So I think part of it is us sitting and having this conversation. And it happens to be linked to the other points as well.
Yeah. No, the thing that was upsetting for me is just the thing that bothers me in general, and that's one-way conversations. So this is a type of content that it's a big frustration in the internet era because everyone is doing one-way conversations. When you're making a post, you're making a video, you're talking about either a politician or a group or an organization or an individual. That person is not in the room to defend themselves. So especially when you say, well, this organization or this individual or this party or this politician believes this or does this or has said this, when that turns out to be false or incorrect, then that person's not there to state the facts. And I remember sending you a long voice note as well saying, well, thank you for the detailed video, but then here's the detailed answer on many of these things.
I appreciate the detailed answer, by the way.
And that's why I said I prefer a conversation, because then you can raise points and say, well, why did you do this? Why did you say this? Why did you pursue this? And then I can actually answer the question. Because and I mean, you realize this now with Urania, there's a lot of lies out there. You visited that town and your mind was blown by not the fact specifically what they're doing, but the fact of how what they're doing there doesn't match, reality does not match the narrative.
Correct.
So what's happening there does not match the idea that you get on social media, it doesn't match the idea you get from politicians, doesn't match what you read in the media. And once you have an experience like that, where you've been looking at this narrative the whole time and you experience the real thing and your perception gets a bit shattered, I personally started asking, but what else are they lying about? What else is there that I need to go experience myself, talk to these people themselves to know what they really believe and what they say? And there was nothing in your video that was malicious or anything that I thought like, I need to reprimand Penuel, like shout at him or whatever. Just
the white guys are telling me to pipe down.
No, but there were things there that I could see, but that's the narrative talking. That's not Penuel saw us do this or say this. This is what you're seeing from sources that should be reputable. Things you read and saw from people and from media outlets and from sources that shouldn't be lying quite blatantly or lying by omission. And there's many cases and many issues where this is particularly the case. And two of those issues are particularly the case surrounding the old South African flag and the issue of farm murders and the connected K1ll The Boer connected to it. And we can go through each one of those. But my main intention with contacting you afterwards again was to say, well, I'd like to have a conversation because it comes from a place of deep frustration in me with one-way conversations. I've been guilty of it. I've been made posts about people or organizations not being in their presence for them to defend themselves. And I've been hard on myself for it. I'm doing it less and less, and I want to do it less and less. But that's the place where it came from, where I'd rather sit down, let's talk about it, let's publish it. It doesn't have to be private. But then we can actually have like I said, I don't like the idea of debate because it's again been tainted. It has its idea of a debate as a fight.
Someone must win.
It's a clash of egos. Someone has to win. You can't concede in a debate because that's losing points. Then your opponent scored a goal. So while what we do might be a debate technically, I don't want to call it that because that creates an impression and creates expectations with people that are not going to be met. I'm not going to be here trying to win anything. I'm going to state my case. You're going to state your case. And I'm going to concede if you make a good point because we're not playing a soccer match. This is not trying to score goals and come out on the other side winning. I want to have anyone listening to this and just if it was just you and me talking as well, I want to come closer to the truth on both sides. I hope we can achieve that.
I've got 2 quick points. The first one is I would personally like for you to not stop the one-way posts. Sometimes they actually lead to the sit down and the conversation. Sometimes when you only want to have conversations with people in the room, it may not have the impact that you want. Not to say go do one-way post and try and trigger a response, but I'd like to think you are being genuine. So maybe, yes, do the sit downs, but don't stop the one-way, especially if you feel strongly about something at the time. The second point is with the sit down, one of my concerns, even about us sitting down, was I don't want it to be, let's say, my opinion versus AfriForum. The last thing I'd ever want is to challenge an organization that is doing so much good. And that would really annoy me because I'd be like, I may disagree with certain things, but it's not for people to be like, oh, what I took out from that AfriForum is dodgy. Maybe I should reconsider supporting them. And you're like, that is not why we're having that conversation. And if you ever took that out, that would really, really make me sad. And I'd almost then regret ever raising anything at all, because now you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Right. I've had to do a lot of introspection in the last couple of years. I had an epiphany. I was at an Afrikaans primary school, and I was greeting, "Middag, gaan dit, wat." And for some weird reason, I had this light bulb where I was like, this is an Afrikaans school. And it hit me like a train. This is an Afrikaans school. And we miss it, a lot of us at the time. And maybe it's spending more time with Afrikaans people on Afrikaans spaces. When a school is an Afrikaans school, it means the language there is Afrikaans. If I get into that space and I'm speaking isiZulu, speaking English, it's okay, it's my languages, but it is an Afrikaans school. It's going into a German school, French school. And one of the things Afrikaans people pride themselves on is we love our language and our culture. And it's one of the things that sadly Black people have been made to lose. You have it today when I have a conversation with another Black person and I speak isiZulu, nina maZulu, always your language. So I must speak English. Who are we accommodating? Because my language is isiZulu. Maybe you Spedi, Setswana. You can speak your language. If we don't understand each other, yes, maybe we can both compromise. But why must I be ashamed of my language? So you're in an Afrikaans school and everyone who greets you, "Middag, gaan dit," you're like, but I'm Black. Why is he greeting me in Afrikaans? Like, because it's an Afrikaans space. And in that introspection, I had to be reminded of AfriForum and the work it's doing. And the mandate of serving Afrikaans people and other minority groups. That's very important. It's important for me to at never any point get confused. Yeah, but look at Alexandra and what's happening there. You're like, look, we appreciate and look if we can help. But you need to understand our mandate and our focus is here. I think there might be someone else whose mandate is Alex, Tembisa, Cosmo City.
If not, created.
If not, then created. So even in my criticisms, I had to take a step back. The old South African flag was one of the things I've said I don't agree with AfriForum on. And the fact that I don't agree, and at the time I'm a paying member, actually almost doesn't matter. I'm contributing for work. I don't agree on this. I can be an ANC paying member, but I think selling SAA with Pravin Gordhan is wrong. I can be part of a church and the pastor's saying, we're going to take this money, we're going to buy a new car for, and you're like, I don't agree with this. Do I leave the church? You guys must go jump, but they do so much good work. I tried to listen to Ernst Roots explaining the nuance of that, and I still disagree. Maybe you can, if we're going point by point, maybe you can explain the stance and I'll share my views of why I disagree, even if it means I have to share some of the views of other people. My understanding is AfriForum, freedom of expression, here's a flag. It was one of the flags of South Africa. Some people want to have it out there. We're not saying racism is fine. We're not saying we miss apartheid. We're saying this is a flag. Some people just want to put it up and people are being told, you can't display this flag anyway. And we're like, but you're infringing on my rights and my freedom of expression. And Black people are like, but this is a symbol. Like Nazi Germany and the swastika. If you understand what this flag means to Black people and the apartheid government, have the sensitivity, which later on becomes ironic with the Dubulipunu now. Where now I'm like, you know what, actually, this EFF is also annoying me because they're doing the same thing. Where it's like, but you guys are also using a symbol that comes from a certain time, which creates zero unity. There's no unity here. There's no nation building, Nasibo. You're triggering people. Why would you even think of trying to allow this flag to exist? Yeah.
Well, I think the best that I can do what I want to achieve is that people just have the facts and the truth and they can decide for themselves. Because we live, unfortunately, we've touched on it a little bit now. We live in a time where though the institutions and the people and the individuals that should be providing people with the truth are providing them with half-truths. As in my family, or it's a common saying among Afrikaners, maar 'n halve waarheid is ook 'n leuen. A half-truth is just as good as a lie. And there's a lot of half-truths and a lot of lie by omission in this case. So if I can put all the facts on the table, we can still disagree on many of the sentiments and on the motivation behind it. But I want people to stop debating about a fictional case that doesn't exist. And there's a fictional flag case that doesn't exist. So let's go back in time. I'm not going to give you the legal jargon and stuff. I'm just going to give you the basic timeline. What happens? If I remember correctly, there's a major uproar around photos on Facebook, on social media by Nicholas Bauer, he's a journalist, where he posted photos of the old South African flag at an anti-farm murder protest. I think it was at Black Monday. I can't remember specifically what he was claiming. Then it comes out, a big uproar, politicians weigh in, everyone's talking, this the talk of the week is these pictures of these old flags. Then it comes out these pictures were not taken at that event. It's old photographs. Nicholas Bauer, the journalist, apologizes, takes down the post, but the damage is already done. Now, Nelson Mandela Foundation opens this case for banning the old South African flag. Mostly, I think, if you interpret within that context, because of this social media conversation and this outrage going on, that's what drives them, because it happens in the same time. Doesn't matter if the journalist took down the photos, apologized, said it wasn't in context, or it didn't happen as he claimed it did. Then the Nelson Mandela Foundation puts AfriForum as a respondent in the court documents. What does this mean? It means that AfriForum can respond in this court case, but the case is not against AfriForum. It's not AfriForum is being taken to court because we waved the flag or a supporter of AfriForum waved the flag or there was a flag at our event. AfriForum, the Nelson Mandela Foundation couldn't find someone to take to court, so they added AfriForum as a respondent.
Are you serious?
They didn't take an individual to court. They didn't take an organization to court.
It's not because AfriForum did anything.
No. AfriForum was
They just chose to pick you guys
as a respondent, but it means you can take part in the case. And But as an organization that stands for freedom of expression and who also sees where this will lead if you start banning flags, that's our view, that it will escalate to other symbols, says, well, then we have to take this case. Even though we're not being accused of anything, even though the case is not against us, we are being given the opportunity to take part in the case, which we then accept. We then end up losing that case. And the thing that is very important to me that really stands out now in 2024, I remember in interviews as well, I kept warning people and said, remember, this is not about AfriForum's desire to wave the flag. There are no old South African flags at our headquarters. I've never seen a colleague of mine, even before I started AfriForum, I haven't seen a picture of a colleague of mine waving that flag. Not even, especially not now that I've been there in person to see. I've never seen someone with that flag. We're not fighting for our rights or for our desire to wave it, but for the principle of what this will lead to. And we've been proven correct in 2024 with Ronald Lamona coming out saying that we now want to ban the vierkleur, the four-color, which is the old Suid-Afrikaanse Republiek, the ZAR, the Transval Boer Republic flag. Now that's a whole different story. There's the old flag case, and then there's the old flag, the oranje, blanje, blauw flag, and then there's the vierkleur flag. The vierkleur flag is the flag one of the flags under which the Boers fought the British in the Anglo-Boer War. This is, for example, the old flag. I have no emotional connection to it. I don't own one. Will never own one.
Sure.
I have no sentiment. It's before my time. Sure. I have no memories even of it. But the four-color, the vierkleur that we fought the British under, which we fought the empire under, that's a flag I have an emotional connection to. That is a flag that I have a sentiment around, where this is an anti-imperialism flag. This is the flag that my ancestors fought and died under to preserve their independence against an encroaching imperial force. This is the flag that were motivating my people when they were being put in concentration camps. So that's a flag where, with the old South African flag, you ask me, but what do you think about it? So, well, it's just, what is it? A journalist asked me, what does it represent to you? I said, it's just the flag of the old regime. It's not but then the journalist asked, but what's your feelings around it? I don't have any feelings. It's before my time. But if you ask me what are my feelings around the Vierkleur, the old Transvaal flag, I'm like, no, that's an anti-imperialism flag. That's the freedom flag where my ancestors fought for their freedom against the most powerful empire on the planet. And if that Ronald Lamola is saying that this is the next flag that we're coming for this year, they put out a press statement saying that we're going to look into that possibility. That's what AfriForum predicted when this old South African flag case started. They're not going to stop there. They're going to start with the easiest target, the flag that is the easiest to get banned, and then they're going to move on to more targets and more targets. And that's what they're doing now. So AfriForum's ready for that fight. Good luck to the ANC. I don't think they understand the difference between how Afrikaners will react to those two different flags. The reaction to wanting to ban the Vierkleur is going to be much different than the reaction to wanting to ban the old South African flag for the history that I explained now. So that's our case.
Sure.
We've gotten to the point now where we lost that case. We lost it on appeal. So
what does losing that case mean? Does it mean that the old flag was banned?
We got some form of victory in the appeal case where it's no longer banned in private. So if you possess it you like history and you own it as a collector's item, or you have it in some form in your private home, then it's no longer banned, but it's banned in public spaces.
It had never been banned up until that point.
Up until that point, no. Up until that point, you couldn't be held criminally culpable for waving the old South African flag in public.
This gentleman that posted this flag on social media essentially sparked the banning of the flag in public. So they are almost to blame, because otherwise no one had ever thought of doing this until the Nelson Mandela Foundation saw the uproar and decided, let's actually do something about it.
Yeah, that's how it looks to me. That's how it looks to most people. I can't see a scenario where else the Nelson Mandela Foundation would then get that idea, if not for it dominating the news cycle that entire week. And as I said, it doesn't matter that the journalist retracted the post later. That doesn't matter to the story. But that's what happened. And now we're here now. That's, like I said, we can debate. We can even disagree about whether it should be banned or not.
Sure.
But I just want to make sure everyone knows this is how it went down. This is the timeline. This is the case. So we're not debating about, like I said, a fictional case. We're debating the case itself. And the same applies to farm murders.
Does this mean officially that anyone who's seen waving the flag out there gets in trouble? This includes non-white people? Or do you think it's case specific at a protest?
As I understand it, is if you are waving it in public, then someone needs to take you to court for it. So
anyone waving the old flag. Could be me waving a flag. That's a violation of something.
You're going to have to explain in court what the context is of your waving it in public. But as I understand the ruling, you're going to be in trouble.
The differences and potential similarities between the Vierkleur and the old South African flag under the apartheid government, because most of the things that you spoke about sound like they would be great symbols for Afrikaners as well. When we were in government, when we ruled, when we built institutions, some of which the ANC are destroying today, the old apartheid flag reminds us of a time when we were actually in control, when we were building Afrikaner schools, when our government that represents us gave us confidence. Wouldn't some people have a valid right to have that and contrast it to the Vierkleur and say, but these flags represent almost the same thing to us? The one obviously has a deeper anti-imperial, but this one was a time when we were actually in power and we saw the lives of Afrikaners improve.
I'm sure there are Afrikaners out there that interpret it in that way.
Sure.
I can only speak from my own experience where, well, firstly, my own feelings towards the two symbols, and then secondly, from what I've experienced talking to people that lived during that time, people that are my age, people that are younger, that are older. And the impression that I continue getting is that for most Afrikaners, that flag represents a government flag or a state flag.
Sure.
Not a Afrikaner. I've never encountered an Afrikaner that refers to it as an Afrikaner flag.
It's got the Union Jack in it, right?
Yeah.
It's got the old British.
Yeah,
it's not the old. It's got the British flag in it.
That's a running joke where some Afrikaners will say it's a very ugly flag because there's a Union Jack on it. But I can tell you, in my experience, I've encountered hundreds of Afrikaners that call the Vierkleur an Afrikaner flag. This is a cultural flag. But I've never personally encountered an Afrikaner that refers to the old South African flag. And that's another thing. It's a little nuanced, but it's important. it's not the apartheid flag. It's 1928 where it was introduced. So it was the flag under which apartheid happened, but it's also the flag under which South Africa fought the Nazis in the Second World War. So is it the apartheid flag or is it the anti-Nazi flag? Is it the most technical correct is the old South African flag. But just to finish that point, I've never encountered an Afrikaner that refers to that flag, the old South African flag, as an Afrikaner flag. It's always referred to as the old dispensation or the old regime or the previous government's flag.
I don't know the Vierkleur flag. I'd like to I'm assuming that most black people don't know what it is. So when we speak about symbolism, the idea of seeing it and getting angry wouldn't make sense. A flag that you don't know, like, hey, this flag is also bad. Based on what? Did Ronald Lamula explain why they have an issue with this flag and why they'd potentially go after it?
Well, he claimed that it is in the same way as the old South African flag, a flag that represents oppression and marginalization of people, and a flag under which oppression happened. That I don't have the press statement here with me, but that was the gist of it. But like I said, it's much less, well, not much less, that's the one.
I'm literally looking at this flag. I've never seen it before in my life.
But it doesn't surprise me. You'll definitely see a lot of the old South African flag, because when you watch a documentary or a newscast or even go to a museum or anything, you'll see it represented.
It's in the old South African flag there next to the Union Jack.
It's the old
May
flag.
as well ban the Union Jack as well, jeez.
It's the old flag of the Transvaal Republic. So that's there was the Transvaal Republic and the Free State Republic. Free State Republic has an orange and white flag, and this one is the one in the red, middle. And this one is red, green, white, and blue.
Sure. People will look it up. It's fine.
You can just Google Vierkleur.
Sure. Vierkleur flag.
But you will be hard pressed, just as a South African walking the public spaces of South Africa, if you've ever encountered that flag.
Sure.
It's particularly.
Let's hope we don't give it a spotlight, and then certain people are like, another pain point. Ernst Van Zyl said it's going to upset Afrikaners. We want it gone. The flag must go. Must piss off the Afrikaners, Baba.
But like I said, with that, talking about that flag case, just to wrap that up again, just to make sure, because what's really important for me is having the facts on the table, the real case, and then people can decide for themselves. They can vehemently disagree with AfriForum's stance in regards to freedom of expression in that regard. But I just want them to be debating the real facts. Sure. As I said, the same applies to farm murders. I don't know if you want to move on to that one.
We'll move on to it just now. I remember Ernst Roots highlighting that old South African flag was polarizing even within AfriForum, where some people within AfriForum were like, we don't understand why you're taking up this case. You guys don't regret taking it. Not from a losing perspective, but from a maybe we should just have let it go, because maybe we weren't that strong about it.
It's a principal case.
Sure.
So when we decided whether we're going to take this case or not, I mean, we had the option. If we were being taken to court by the Nelson Mandela Foundation, we wouldn't have an option, and we had to be there.
Sure.
But we chose to take that case specifically because it was a principal case. And I can tell you now, it didn't do us any good. Didn't make our brand stronger. It didn't get us a bunch of new members. Didn't get us money. Didn't get anything positive. But what it did do is now the historical record will show that AfriForum stood up for freedom of expression, or stood up for what they believed in, even when they didn't get anything from it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that seems to be an alien concept to some people, that idea of a principle stance.
Sure. Even if you lose.
Even if you lose.
But we wanted on the record that we stood up, we fought,
let the historical record show. So when in the I want to say toekoms, in the future, when the government tries to ban other flags, nobody can say, but nobody who saw this coming, nobody warned us. Like, no, AfriForum saw it coming, and now we're being proven correct in this year. But when it comes to specifically these principal cases, it's actually funny enough, that C.A. Langenhoven poem that I mentioned about the man that does the right thing even when nobody sees. The poem ends with, and he is also the man who does the right, who stays loyal to his conscience even if he gets punishment instead of reward. That's how the poem ends. And that's what we're doing here. We got punished and we didn't get any reward from it. But
Ronald Lamula didn't reference the Vrystaat flag.
no.
Only the vierkleur.
Only the vierkleur, yeah.
Do you have any idea why?
I think it was because it was used at a protest this year. There was a court case protest in Groblersdal where it was used by some of the protesters.
Oh, okay. Any thoughts around the differences between the Transvaal and the Vrystaat? The ideologies, the different types of leadership, the different types of Afrikaners? Because I'm guessing the Vrystaat Afrikaners probably look at the Transvaal Afrikaners as weaklings from the city.
Well, you can ask me that question when we sit down again, because I'm currently reading Herman Gilume's book called The Afrikaner's Biography of a People. So it's a book this thick. It's a 700-page book that the historian Herman Gilume wrote. He is probably the most premier historian that South Africa has ever produced, at least one of them. And his magnum opus, his masterpiece, is writing this story, writing a biography for a culture.
Sure.
And I'm currently at page 120 out of 700. Me and Ernst Roots are challenging each other to keep reading. So he keeps reading, I keep reading.
Do you guys discuss it?
Yeah, well, we still need to now discuss it because he's read to a certain point. I've now reached that point. Now he can continue, and we'll discuss when we see each other again.
But we all know the echte boer is from the Vrystaat, right? Just to agree on principles.
So in that book will be about Transvaal and the Free State Republics as well. And when I've read that, I've told you this as well before interviews. If I don't have historical knowledge on something, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm this expert. I'd rather go do the research and tell you, here's an IOU, and we can talk about it next time.
That would be interesting.
And I'm going to go, when I'm done reading that book, I'll have a proper idea of what went down there. Yeah.
I'm going to make one point before we move on. I'm obviously just joking with lack of knowledge, but Free State is very big farm land. Big,
flat.
Yeah, flat, dry. You know, look, it's not like the Transvaal is luscious and green.
The joke in the Free State is if your dog runs away, you can see it running away for 3 days.
But I could assume, because one of the things that fascinated me growing up, especially playing rugby, the way Afrikaans schools, the way Afrikaans boys tackle each other never made sense to me. You'd swear these guys hate each other. I'm like, what the hell? And then you'd hear some of the chirps that you guys are coming from the city, you're not real Afrikaners. We obviously always on the plus. Guys wake up in the city and you don't really do anything. So I think
Free State, chicken counts as a vegetable.
Oh snap! You're a vegetarian now. We'll give you chicken. Yeah. Farm murders. This is the one that probably triggers me the most. The Tubulipunu one just really, really annoyed me because of the propaganda on both sides.
I think we can tackle this in one sitting there because they're so interconnected. But
go for it. Should I go?
Yeah, go for it. Lay the foundation. We'll go from
there. I thought of bringing stats and numbers, but I decided not to. Dan Corder's done the work for me. Dan Corder's collecting a lot of enemies, especially in the white community, because I think he would be described as a liberal. And the type of white person he is, I believe he's English from the Western Cape. He sounds like those white liberals from back in the struggle days, and he condemns a lot of white people's behavior. There's a lot of bashing. A lot of people appreciate bashing of we white people have done all these bad things. And for other white people, it upsets them because it's like, look, we may have done some things bad, but it's not like we're all bad. And you're making it seem like, and he made I thought it was a really great video unpacking how would I explain this? The falseness around farm murders and white genocide. Which Donald Trump, when he was president of America, spoke out about. I think there was a documentary that was released from South Africa's side. And it's this whole notion. And I see even Tristan Tate, the brother of Andrew Tate, is pushing this on Twitter as well. They are killing white people in South Africa. And you're like, I've responded to some of them, like, stop with this rubbish. Because it becomes a narrative, especially when people that aren't even here are going out into the world saying, they are killing black people in South Africa. Like, but who told you that? No, I spoke to the EFF member and he's like, bro, there's nothing like that. They are killing white farmers. Who? South Africans. White people are dying. And you're like, so that really upset me. I understand why some people are sensitive about farm murders. I understand. You can be sensitive about any murders. It could be at the Cape Flats. It could be in your township. It could be in your suburb. It could be the femicide, the killing of women. There seems to be a priority for farm murders by people who prioritize farm murders. That's fine. If you want to prioritize farm murders, it's fine. But now we're almost all being forced to prioritize farm murders. If we don't prioritize farm murders, we won't have food, which is annoying for me. Number two, the assumption is that all farm murders are of white farmers, of which farm murders, my understanding of the data is it includes anyone on a farm. Could be an owner, could be a worker. And the data doesn't show race, that it's a white person that was killed. And then the biggest thing probably is the number. Any murder is bad. One person's murder is horrible. When you look at the data, you'll find 50 to 80. This is stats. I don't know if there's other numbers. 50 to 80 farm murders every year. And we are being made to focus on farm murders when people are being killed in Mpumalanga with the mines and the corruption there. People are dying. I think there's numbers of like 70 people per week in the Cape Flats. People are dying in townships. It's like clearly these murders are more valuable than others. And not just us, but the whole world is being told, hey, focus here. And not only are they killing white farm owners, but they are targeting white people. And who's they? It's probably black people. And that narrative, I think, is not good for this country. And seeing AfriForum almost support and endorse this message really hurt me, because I'm not asking AfriForum to stop whatever work they're doing and to prioritize. If most of your members are farm owners, people who have lost loved ones, speak for them. You have to. But now there's this narrative of black people are killing farm owners who are white. And I'm like, I don't think the data supports that. Dan Corder agrees with me. And to what you're saying about the one-way communication, Ernst Roots made a counter video and said, look, let's sit. And he asked me to mediate. Dan Corder was like, nope. These AfriForum guys, I don't think they're genuine. They want to spin what. I'm like, okay, this doesn't help anyone. But I was like, you know what? It's not for me to decide. So those are my thoughts on the farm murders and white genocide. I think it's propaganda. I think it's wrong. I think it's in bad spirit. And it makes me sad that AfriForum seems to also be supporting this narrative.
I actually wish that that conversation happened. I was looking forward to it between my colleague Ernst Roots and Dan Corder. I'm a bit disappointed, but can't force it. But I know it would have been very constructive, at least from Ernst's side. I talk to him about this issue quite regularly, and Ernst wrote a book on it. And I think he's the type of
the
guy.
name of the book, sorry?
K1ll The Boer.
K1ll The Boer. Anyone that wants to read Ernst Roots, K1ll The Boer. Sure.
It's a fascinating book, but it's a difficult read because it goes into some of the cases. I had to skip some of the cases. I couldn't read them. But
the horrific acts. Okay.
But let me start by, on a personal note, basically why AfriForum takes the case of farm murder so seriously. On a personal note, from my side, I grew up in a farming community. I grew up in Malmesbury, about 1 hour outside of Cape Town. Lived there my entire life. Was born there, technically born in Belleville just for the day. Then I got drove from there. From the second day, I was in Malmesbury.
Sure.
Lived there my entire life. Went to Hoërskool Swartland, Laerskool Swartland. And I pretty much grew up on a farm because Malmesbury is a farming community. Wheat and grapes specifically, wine specifically. So I pretty much grew up on a farm because all my friends came from farms. All the farmers in the area need to send their children to a school, and there's only one school in town that they can send them to. So they all come to Hoërskool Swartland. And with all my friends on farms, I pretty much spent every second weekend on a farm. I've learned so many things about farming, what it means to be a farmer, all from those experiences. I know farming very intimately. And the same is true for my wife. My wife grew up for a large part of her life on a farm as well. And I remember one of the most disturbing voice notes I've ever received. So we often get a lot of voice notes because I deal with farm murders to try and solve the issue. Often get a lot of voice notes of something's happening here, we've got intel from here, something's happening here. And one of the voice notes I open, I hear the voice of someone I know, of the father of someone that went to school with me. And it was very difficult because he was talking about a farm murder or farm attack that just happened now on the farm next door, and they're going to help. And you don't know if you're going to hear about this guy again. Another thing that also needs to be mentioned is the fact that when it comes to this issue, Afrikaners have a very particular connection to the profession of farming.
Yeah.
We call ourselves literally the Boers, the Boere, the farmers. And Dirk Herman wrote an excellent piece on this where he argued that there's a piece of farm in every Afrikaner. If they themselves don't live on a farm, they have family members or friends that live on a farm. If they don't have family or friends, they have a grandfather or someone before them that lived on a farm that was a farmer. So there's an intimate connection disproportionately to, I think, many other cultures in South Africa with farming, so much so that we named ourselves after the profession. Doesn't mean that other cultures don't value farming or can't farm, just means there's a very, very specific close connection here. The best example is, I think I mentioned this to you in a message. I say there's a difference between what the English call their backyard and what Afrikaners call it. So in English, it's a backyard, but in Afrikaans, it's a agterplaas, your back farm.
Yeah.
So even if you don't live on a farm, you have a little garden or a little patch of grass or soil in your backyard, and that's your farm. It's your agterplaas. And that connection is critical to understanding why Afrikaners feel so deeply about farm murders. Because you have to understand, when it comes to farm murders, we all feel it as a community, as a culture, because we're so close to that profession. When you see a video of a 80-year-old woman, or you read an article of an 80-year-old woman that was raped and killed, you see someone's mother that you knew. When you watch a video where they describe a case where some elderly woman had holes drilled through her feet, you see your grandmother. When you read a story of a 8-year-old boy who was drowned in a bathtub of boiling water, you see your little brother. When you hear a story as Brendan Horner, who was murdered in 2020 in Senekal, of a 21-year-old man being murdered and hung up on a pole, you see your best friend. So now that in that context, you see that happening, you take my personal context into regard. Also take into account I've had to console a loved one over the phone where a farm murder or farm attack is taking place. And I have to tell her that everything is going to be okay. A farm attack is happening on a farm where her parents stay. She doesn't know what's going to happen, whether they're going to be raped, whether they're going to be murdered. I just have to tell her that everything is going to be fine. And all these people tell me I'm a terrible person or a racist or a propagandist have never experienced that in their life. Probably not. They've probably been very far from that type of experience. But they sit there in their armchairs and they do it. So I want to paint that picture specifically for the context where this is coming from, where now all of this happens. You come from a farming community like me. You know a lot of farmers. You're intimately, culturally connected to farming. You've experienced it. You've talked to the victims of these violent crimes. You've heard the testimonies. You've seen the aftermath. And you go out there to use your voice, as you said earlier, to use your voice to bring attention to this issue that cuts you very deeply. And what happens? You're called a racist. You're called a propagandist. You're called a terrible person. Not just, well, you're wrong on the facts. No, you're a terrible person. You have a horrible heart. You hate people. You're doing this out of hate. You're doing this because you hate black people. You're doing this because you want to sow fear about another group of people. How would you react in that situation where you so deeply care about this issue? You just want to bring attention. You want to help resolve the issue. But you're being framed as this terrible person. I can't think of another violent crime phenomenon where that is the case, where those activists and people that try to solve the problem or try to bring attention to that problem are framed and attacked and smeared in this way, are lied about in this way. I can't think of another example. And speaking of lies, that's where it comes to this whole narrative of white genocide. It's not something AfriForum has ever done. We don't call it a white genocide. You can go listen to our interviews, read our documents, scour our website with a fine-tooth comb. It's not what we do. We say farm murders is a serious issue. It's an issue that needs, I think, and AfriForum thinks, a particular strategy, a unique strategy to tackle. but we don't call it a genocide. Ernst Roots, in his book, K1ll The Boer, dedicates an entire chapter to describing, in 2018, 6 years ago already, he can write about anything else he wants, but he dedicates an entire chapter to describing why it's not and debunking why it's not a white genocide. But still people spread that lie. Still people talk about it. And you ask them for evidence, they're like, no, I don't have to provide you evidence. I know it's true. I'm like, wow. People saying Penuel is a rude podcast host. Well, do you have evidence? Who was you rude to? No, I just know. According to the kids on the bus, the people in the Twitter streets, they say he's this X, Y, and Z. So just as with the old flag case, I just want the facts on the table. Let's debate. Let's have a real conversation about the facts. But I don't want to be debating about a fiction that doesn't exist, a fictional Ernst that doesn't exist, a fictional AfriForum that doesn't exist. So when it comes to this issue of farm murders and the whole idea of white genocide, you won't find AfriForum calling it that. So to then base your entire criticism, and I'm not talking to you specifically, but basing your entire criticism of AfriForum on, yeah, I can understand it's a serious issue, but they call it this, therefore they're propagandists. You're attacking a fictional organization. And the only way that people that try to connect that term to AfriForum justify it is by 10 degrees of separation. So they'll say, Ernst Roots may not say it personally, but he's talked to this person who's the brother of this person who talked to this person who says it's a white genocide. Or here is a post by someone who hasn't worked at AfriForum for 12 years, over a decade, that shared a petition that mentions the word genocide. This means they're doing it. That's not a reasonable place to start. Let's talk about the facts, the statistics, and the issue itself. Just as with the old flag case, we can vehemently disagree whether this should be an issue or not. But let's not talk about something that doesn't exist. Let's not talk about a fiction. Let's not debate about why are you saying X if we don't say X? Why are you doing Y if we're not doing Y? That's all that's important to me. I don't really care about making money out of this case or out of this phenomenon or growing AfriForum out of it. And I know my colleagues don't either, because my colleagues come from the same type of background that I do. They come from farming communities. They are Afrikaners. And as I said earlier, because they're Afrikaners, they have this connection to that profession. And to then make that claim that they're just doing it for the money, or they're doing it to sow hatred, or they're doing it because they're propagandists, or because they're bad, evil people. Working with those people, being friends of those people, having them as colleagues that fight this fight with me, I can't just sit silently and say, well, let's agree to disagree. I'm like, no, you're insulting the character and honor of people that I hold in very high regard, people that I know have solid consciences and moral compasses. So that's why I want to end or wrap up that chapter of our conversation is, as with any of these things, let's put the real facts on the table and we discuss them happily. We could even talk about the controversial things that you vehemently or very strongly disagree with. Let's do it. But just don't let them be fake. Don't let them be a narrative. Where did you hear it? I can't tell you where, but I know it's true. Okay, well, then I can't help you.
I need to start off by sharing my sympathies and condolences to everyone who's lost someone to murder, and especially gruesome murder. And in this context, on a farm, whether they're an owner or a worker. I'd like to share my sympathies and condolences to anyone that you may know personally, and that maybe some of your colleagues may know personally. In the discussion of some of these matters, and it's very important that we discuss them, we need to always raise the importance of the human element. Because we can debate propaganda, narrative, but at the end of the day, people were extremely violated and killed. And we cannot take that away. And they lost, and loved ones lost people. People that know people lost people. And it's not right. Every decent South African would not celebrate the murder of anyone. Any decent South African. I've got a few questions that I've set here and a few notes. The first one being, are you specifically, and then also on behalf of AfriForum, are you saying white genocide does not exist in South Africa, whether farm murders or otherwise?
There's not a white genocide going on in South Africa, and AfriForum doesn't claim that there is one. So it's not just me talking. I'm talking as a representative of AfriForum.
Okay.
That is not the reality in South Africa, and we've never said it is.
Do you think a part of the issue that we have is, I'm going to speak now from a black perspective. Maybe there's a jealousy, asking your opinion, of course, but maybe it's also me just thinking out loud. Maybe there's a jealousy. Maybe we don't speak up enough about murders in our spaces, and we're jealous that these people are so loud, and maybe they value their people so much, and maybe we've normalized murders in our space that we're like, they're complaining about 50 murders. They were about 50 murders in a weekend. And you're like, oh, okay, if you really believe that, it's sad that you're not making noise about it. Because I can tell you now, if we were having 50 Buddha people murdered every weekend, we would maybe even shut this country down. I'm thinking out loud, but I'd also like to hear your thoughts. Do you think there might be some of that black colored, especially if you think of places like the Western Cape, Cape Flats, some of our most dangerous townships, Alex, KwaMashu, Umlazi, in Cape Town, Enyanga, KwaLanga, violent crimes. I can mention Mdantsane, Ipai, Wotozwide, New Brighton, Motherwell, etc. Do you think we might be dealing with something like that? And maybe some of the anger is, I can't believe Penuel is speaking so much about his relative being killed. Our relatives get killed all the time. It's like, but I'm going to make a noise about it because it's my relative and I care.
Yeah. So to answer that question, I just want to create a little scenario and see how you think it would play out. So you said from the statistics you've seen, there's between 50 and 80 farm murders a year.
Yeah.
From AfriForum statistics, it's also in that range, differs from year to year. I just want to put a hypothetical on the table. Let's make it even more conservative. For the sake of argument, let's say there were 50 farm murders in a year. And of course, not all of those murdered are going to be the farmer on the farm. Some of them are his family members, farm workers, friends on the farm. Doesn't matter. There can be many scenarios where different people, not just the farmer, are murdered. So let's be very conservative. Let's say out of the 80 or 70 or 50 farm murders, let's say for argument's sake about 30 were the farmers. The specific farmer.
White farm owners.
Yeah. It's not an official statistic just for...
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Specifically white?
Just the farmers.
Farm owners.
Profession of being a farmer.
No, not white.
No, just
I'm asking in your scenario.
Yeah, just
the race doesn't matter.
Profession of being a farmer.
No
AfriForum already, as you said correctly, well, you touched on it, is we don't record the race. So we don't say, well, this year 80% of the...
I hear you.
Well,
no problem. Okay.
But anyway, 30 farmers were murdered in a year. Let's say, like I said, disclaimer, there's not an official statistic just for the sake of argument. Now let's swap the profession. 30 politicians murdered in a year, 30 journalists, 30 doctors, 30 news editors, 30 lawyers, 5 podcast hosts, 5 music artists, 2 ministers. You can make it very little.
I was going to say, because if it's 30 podcasters, then all the podcasters are gone.
That's why I'm saying.
Yeah, 5.
What would the reaction be? Would the reaction also be to immediately say, it's just violent country, normal crime? Or would there be a task team set up? Would there be a state of emergency put in saying, we have to solve this problem? There's a serious issue. Would it be local, or would it actually be national news that 30 politicians or 30 journalists were murdered this year in South Africa? I can guarantee you, from how I understand the world, it would be international news. There would be outcry from every corner of the world. Doesn't matter the race. I'm just talking about the profession. So what makes the profession of being a farmer different? Why, when any other profession, for example, there are international organizations that track how many journalists are murdered in different countries, and then they publish statistics and it makes international headlines. But why, when it's farmers, nobody, when those journalist organizations post a report or it makes the news, nobody says, normal crime. They say, well, this is serious. We have to do something about it. Why only when it's farmers, the profession of farming that's being murdered, is the immediate reaction to become defensive and say, no, well, it's normal crime. It's South Africa is a violent country. You have to understand X, Y, and Z. Here's the nuances. And like I said, play out those scenarios in your head. And I think anyone that's being honest will tell you that that's not how it would play out in the same way if you swap it with other professions. I just mentioned a few. You can swap it with other ones as well. I'm talking about professions that will actually, for some reason, some professions are just more equal than others. Some professions get more attention than others. But how would you think it would play out? I think it would play out very differently if it was 30 journalists or 5 podcast hosts or 30 politicians instead of 30 or 50 farmers. Like I said, that's using a very conservative statistic. And that's my issue. And then also to add to that, there's no other profession in this country that's being chanted about murdering. Kill the Boer. Is there any other chant that is similar? Kill the politician or kill the journalist or kill the podcaster. No, there's no other chant or song like that. Now, you can put all the historical context on the table. At the end of the day, it's still a chant about murdering a profession for the average listener that hears it. You can't, if a chant needs a historical explanation on why it isn't what you immediately think, it's not what you think it is, then that chant is not clear enough. Then it is actually, many people will definitely understand it differently or not wrongly misinterpret it. So a good example would be where what was argued in our Kill the Boer case is it's not a case of, unless there are 100 crime scenes a year where Kill the Boer is directly linked to the murder, therefore it's a problem. That's not the measure of whether something should be designated as hate speech. The measure is not whether people act on the speech, but the content of the speech itself. So if a politician, for example, says, I almost said bijvoorbeeld again, if a politician says, for example, go kill my political opponents, and none of his supporters follow through because they don't want to go to prison, that politician is still guilty of hate speech. Doesn't mean that because nobody followed through on what he said, that doesn't mean that it's not hate speech. And hate speech has a very clear threshold, or what qualifies it as hate speech. It is hateful speech directed at a certain group, for example, race, religion, culture, that also incorporates a call to violence. Not all a call to violence, that also incorporates a call to violence or to cause harm. And that, in AfriForum's case, qualifies Kill the Boer, the chant, as hate speech. Connected to this whole issue of farm murders, where we've had, on top of that, have had cases where there has been, Kill the Boer has been found at farm murder crime scenes, but also been, talked about by witnesses or testified by witnesses about the attackers screaming that chant while committing the crime.
Have you ever sat with anyone to discuss this topic, and do you think you'd be able to sit with someone and have a heated debate and not get emotional?
I would absolutely be able to have that conversation.
You think so? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to counter what you said and send it back to the question that I had about if maybe it's because Black, colored people maybe don't value their lives as much. My counter to you is, in South Africa, every year we have between 65 to 80 taxi assassinations. So in terms of comparable. And since 1994 till about, what year was it? 2013, about 19 years. We've had about 450 political killings. That's maybe 23 per year. There are people in other professions or in other spaces that are being killed. And we kind of understand these ones because of the type of country we have. The taxi industry, politics, especially political killings in KwaZulu-Natal. And then we can go into the numbers, which I said, I think it might be like 70 a week or something like that. Maybe I'm mistaken. In the Cape Flats, the killings there.
Let's go on those numbers for the sake of argument.
Drugs, gangs, etc. That's not necessarily a profession per se, but it's an area. And maybe the argument to what I was saying, and the question was, maybe the people there are not willing to make the international noise or even the local noise to ask for a task team. Go into the taxi industry and find out what's going on. Go into why are politicians killing each other? And look, these are just politicians. There's other linked killings involving tenders,
right,
where you're not a politician, but you know. So we've got a crime problem and we've got a murder problem in this country. And maybe I was asking a rhetorical question to be like, maybe I think there's a bit of jealousy on saying, clearly these people care so much about their people or people linked to them. I'm going to leave my thoughts on the K1ll The Boer for a bit later and go through some of these questions, because there's an issue that comes in with the understanding of the chant.
Yeah. Can I just ask one more rhetorical question, more for the audience's sake, before we wrap up? There's just something that I can't wrap my head around. If the song is purely symbolic and has nothing to do with killing farmers, there's two questions. The one is, I want to question its presence at the Senekal hearings in 2020, where two farm murderers or alleged farm murderers are on trial, and for murdering Brendan Horner, 21-year-old, that I talked about earlier. And the EFF are chanting "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer" outside the courthouse at a farm murder court case.
Sure.
I can't not connect those two. It doesn't make sense. The second one, again, the audience can decide. I want to ask the question: why, when cross-examined under oath in court, when Julius Malema is asked, "Can you pledge that you will never call for the slaughtering of white people? Can you pledge?" and he refuses? I can't understand why. Maybe we have a clash of morality there between me and Mr. Malema, but I can do it with ease. I can tell you right now, Ernst Van Zyl, representative of AfriForum here, I don't have a Bible now to do an oath, but I know God is watching. I can before God make an oath now, I will never call for the slaughtering of black people. Easiest thing to do in the world. I'll do it again and again and again. Why, and that's my the question I want to leave the audience with, is why.
Don't leave it. I'll attempt to answer it when we get to K1ll The Boer.
Why can't he answer that question? Or why can't he make that pledge, that under oath?
In your personal opinion, do you think you'd feel differently if the murdering of farmers or farm workers was committed by white people? You're making examples of some of the murderers chanting certain things. Someone could argue, I think they were wearing an EFF t-shirt, etc. We've had South Africans, black South Africans, link the farm murders and specifically the horrific extent of them to illegal foreigners. Because we've got a arguably xenophobic issue and we have an immigration issue in this country. And they say, well, it's because you white people hire these foreigners. You don't want to hire us. So obviously they will kill you. And they'll go as far as saying black South Africans don't kill like that. We don't torture victims and whatever. And you're like, oh, so you know how black South Africans murder people? But they argue that. My question is, do you think it would be different if the assumption in many white people's heads was, because we've had an incident recently where a white gentleman, I think, murdered two of his friends, I think on a farm as well, which will probably then be tracked as part of the stats. Do you think the sentiment around the people that get so touched would be different?
So the first one, the first question of how would you react? Well, firstly, we've done the research into who's committing the farm murders. It's not majority illegals. It's majority South Africans. I mean, not shocking anyone, I think. We actually did that ironically because a lot of people on social media were pressing us, look into this. You'll see the truth. Everyone was like, sure, okay, we'll look into this.
Do you guys also have the data for racial demographics of the victims and gender demographics?
No, not that I'm aware of.
No problem.
We looked, so after pressure, we looked into, we'll look into who's committing it. And we were like, oh yeah, no, the majority are South Africans.
Black South Africans.
Yeah. No, just South Africans.
There's no race there as well.
Didn't look into race, The second question of how would I react, or how would AfriForum react if the majority of farm murderers were white? They're still murdering farmers. To come back to that issue I was describing earlier, it's specifically, especially from my side, from an Afrikaner perspective as well, they're still murdering farmers. They're still murdering Afrikaner farmers often. There's a disproportionate amount of Afrikaners represented in the farming, in the agriculture sector. So, of course, if there's a farm murder issue, a lot of those are going to be Afrikaners. I don't think I'd feel any differently. I would condemn those farm murders just the same as human scum.
Do you think most white people who are very emotional about this topic would say the same?
Yeah, because it's about who is being murdered, not about who is committing the murders. It's about the crime.
You genuinely believe what you're saying? Because I don't.
I believe so based on my experience from my colleagues, from my friends, my family, the people that I know. I'm not a expert. I can't speak for everyone. But I can speak from my experience and seeing and experiencing the same sentiments of why people care about this issue. It's very particularly about the crime and the victim, not about who is committing the crime. The farm murders could be committed by robots. People would still care just as much about the victim being murdered, and that's farmers are being murdered in South Africa at a rate that is not acceptable. There should be a response to it.
So going back to the examples I made about the taxi industry, political killings, and the Cape Flats, outside of maybe Black and colored people don't value their own lives as much and don't speak out as much, maybe part of what also assists, I don't even know if assist is the right word, is because the assumption is that the taxi violence is Black on Black. Any violence in the Western Cape, it's maybe colored on colored, Black on Black. So it's like, we're killing each other. And even if you look at apartheid, any killings that happen there's a huge spotlight on white people killing Black people, and less of a spotlight on specifically the ANC and IFP killings in the East Rand, because it's kind of Black on Black. So it's like, if we're killing each other, you know what I mean? So that's why I'm assuming in my head that if a lot of the taxi assassinations were committed by arguably white people, or there was a seeming theme and similar to deaths, political killings, and I think the feeling would be different. So I can only assume that if you flip it around, maybe certain white people, I don't know if the Anglo-Boer War would even be worth a reference here. It wouldn't be as triggering and as emotional as racial. You know, I don't know if cultural squabbles get as much hype as racial squabbles. I think it's just my thought.
Just another point there when you were mentioning, some people might think, but you are asking for farm murders to be given more attention than it deserves, or more priority than it deserves. And then you mentioned the example of gang violence, for example. Gang violence is categorized as a priority crime. This is one of the things AfriForum is asking for, that farm murders also be prioritized, put on the list of priority crimes.
Do you know why it's a priority crime?
Because it's a crime that affects many South Africans, destabilizes communities, and has a very negative effect on the social fabric of the country. I mean, they're just summing it up, but that's pretty much, that's how, when priority crimes are identified, there's looked at what is the effect on the society. Is it a unique type of crime? My colleague Ernst Van Zyl will be much more of an expert. He'll give you here's the.
Because I was then going to ask, on what basis would you want farm murders?
You should ask him when you see him. He has the perfect one. But that's what. So I think there's also a bit of misunderstanding. So one of AfriForum's big things that we want to see is that farm murders be put on the list of priority crimes. But I think that's where the misunderstanding comes in. When people hear priority, they think this should be the priority, the crime that is on the top of the list. That's not. But I completely understand why people get that misunderstanding, because a lot of people don't even know this priority crime list exists. Go check it out.
And how it works and who's on it. And
I think just another example, I can't even name all the priority crimes. I know CIT heists, cash in transit heists, are another priority crime. And there was another one.
I can guess now that, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I stand to be correct, but I can imagine the killing of women and maybe even the killing of people from the LGBTQI plus community would probably argue to also be added there.
Yeah, you'll have to go check. But yeah, like I said, our argument is that it should be put on that list as one of the many priority crimes. That means that it gets a unique response and it gets focused on, but focused on in the sense that other priority crimes are focused on. But like I said, I have a lot of understanding for people that get that misunderstanding,
ignorance and not knowing.
That just hear priority crime and immediately think priority as in the most important crime.
I challenge the Minister of Police, Bheki Cele, whoever's in charge, and the police commissioner. I challenge them, and you know, it goes beyond what I'm saying now. And I'm going to give the two examples that are important. I'm going to start with the weaker one. I challenge whoever the commissioner, I think it's Kisweta or whatever, at SARS. I challenge them to publish racial demographics of who pays tax in this country, because they actually do it by gender. They have a split, they have income bands, they have it by province. I think they even have it by city of the most taxpayers. but they don't have it by race. Not for the reason of destroying, because transparency. We are citizens. We'd like to know who's paying the majority of the tax so that we can plan accordingly and have a conversation. Because you do it with gender. We'd have to ask, why are you doing it with gender? Are you causing a fight? So that's the one part. The other part is I challenge the Minister of Police to publish the racial demographics of farm murders. If it's possible to also give us the locations, maybe provincial or whatever the case may be. Because again, when you're fighting for things like becoming a priority, you want to be like, but these are the hot zones, like hijacking hot zones. Be like, these are the areas where we'd actually like more policing work, whatever the case may be. Quicker emergency response, I think is very important. I had a point I wanted to make, sorry.
No, go fine, it's fine.
No, it was on this thing of priority crimes. I have got a personal issue. This is me now just speaking. You can share your opinion or not.
Yeah.
I have an issue with the idea of femicide in this country, the killing of women. And then sometimes they'll mention the children. But in particular, the killing of women. And women will protest. And women will make a noise. You men are killing us. Hashtag men are trash. And at some point, like with the farm murders, what Dan Quarter did, and the challenge that I hope he'll take up at some point with Ernst Van Zyl, looking at the data, I think a couple of years back, if you look at the data, we had about 25,000 murders in this country. That's not a good number. And even when going back to like international noise, when we were listening to the data of deaths with Russia and Ukraine, and then you compare that period with South Africa, you're like, we've got more murders here, and we're not an official war zone.
Yeah.
So we've got a crime problem.
Ukraine has electricity as well.
Oh, snap.
It's an active war zone.
Bigger problems. 25,000. Of the 25,000 a couple of years ago that were murdered, 21,000 were men. 3,200 were women. Again, no one is saying, but it's just 3,000. Any murder is bad. But when you're going to go out there and scream and raise funding and be like, men are killing us. And maybe it goes back to that thing I was saying about racial, because people argue, but it's not women killing the men, it's men killing the men. So then we must be like, oh, it's okay. Men can die because it's just men killing men. And then it's men killing women. But I was like, I don't think there's a femicide here. Speaking genocide, there's no femicide of men are going out of their way to kill women. If anything, it almost looks like men maybe think twice before killing women. And they'd probably rather kill another man. And the data of what I've seen is 50% of women that are killed, of these 3,200, 50% are intimate partners. So it's like, it's not even strangers. It's the man that you're with, you guys are fighting, there was cheating, there was alcohol, there was drugs, there was whatever. And it got so heated that your partner took your life. Which means ordinary men out on the street are not actually going out of their way, statistically based on the data. So I worry about some of this. I've seen the same thing with the LGBTQI plus community, with the numbers that they have, the amount of noise they get to make, the amount of influence they make in schools, the amount of influence they get to make in retail, consumerism. Woolworths ran a campaign recently. The amount of money they can raise for their efforts, understanding their history and that they want a voice as well. And then going back to this thing of, clearly there are people, could be women, could be gay people, it could be people who are sympathetic to farm murders who are like, I'm sorry that you're not speaking louder for your people. I'm going to speak for mine. And if that makes you angry and upset, I'm sorry. But I'm going to keep making noise until something changes.
But there's again, with that example, now I'm not too well familiar with all this statistics in regards to gender-based violence. But what I do know is that none of those, when those statistics come out, nobody's knee-jerk reaction is to say, it's normal crime.
Sure.
South Africa is a violent country. What are you moaning about?
It's because of that emotional thing you were speaking about. Because when you think of as a black person, when you think of a woman being raped, killed, you think of your sister. When you think of a farm, let's call it farm owner being killed for a black person, you think old Afrikaans guy. And maybe what I can ask you is, how important do you think the land conversation is in this? Let's assume most of these murders are inflicted on white people, Afrikaans people, the Boer, and most of them are being caused by black people, angry black people, kill the Boer black people, maybe EFF supporters. How much of that do you think is impacted by the land conversation, where we still haven't, never mind changing it, because I don't even think we know what we have to be changing. We're not having a real conversation around the land, because it's one thing to say the Boer and Landbou, there's an overrepresentation of white Afrikaners. And then the next question is, but why is there no transformation from other parts? Why do we still assume farm murders are white people?
So just a final point before we get to that.
Sure.
A final point on the comparison with gender-based violence and the activists talking about that. Also, with that violent crime phenomenon, you don't have the president of the country going on an international platform and saying there are no women being murdered in South Africa. Cyril Ramaphosa, 2018, at a Bloomberg conference in New York, goes on that international platform and says, in his words, there are no murdering of farmers in South Africa. There are no murdering of white farmers in South Africa. He repeats himself.
He said it like that?
He said it like that. Those are his words.
I personally don't like our president. Sorry, Cyril Ramaphosa.
But yeah,
I just
anyway,
want to try and look it up to try and defend him.
You know what you'll find? You'll find the media defending him. So that's my second point. So what happened in the wake of that? Cyril Ramaphosa says, so don't read exactly what you see before I say it. What's the first thing you're going to see? What the president meant when he said, there are no murdering of white farmers in South Africa. There are no murdering of farmers in South Africa. So with any other crime, if the president went on an international stage and said, this crime is not happening in South Africa, it has never happened, he would be fact-checked. The media would jump on him and say, he's wrong, here are the statistics. If, for example, the president said there are no women being murdered in South Africa. But what happens? The media write puff pieces and rush to his defense and say, whoa, what he actually meant. Climb into his mind and say this was what he was thinking when he said it. No, he just denied that it's happened.
But the media didn't defend Msholozi.
No, and what happened then was, so this, again, just to bring it back to our discussion on why this crime phenomenon, I don't think it's just normal crime, is the fact that no other violent crime phenomenon in South Africa, the president of the country goes on an international platform and says, this crime is not happening in my country. And nobody challenges him except AfriForum and other.
Can I read this?
Yeah, sure. What do you see there?
So this is from Google. The first article that comes out is AfriForum. Shout out to AfriForum.
Yeah.
AfriForum to Ramaphosa on farm killings, keeping quiet, denying, and doing it. It carries on. So this was you guys challenging. The next one that comes up is the DA, the Democratic Alliance. 68 days and counting. This was from August 2023. Ramaphosa still refuses to take action on farm murders. So I think for that, shout out to the DA. Reuters. South Africa's Ramaphosa warns against using farm murders to stoke racial hatred. So that's his concern. Africa Check. No, this is something else. And then the next one is businesslive.co.za. Ramaphosa explains why he said there are no killings of farmers in US TV interview. So in quotes, it says that he did say there are no killings. And then he went on to defend.
His literal words were, there are no killing of farmers in South Africa. And then he repeats himself. He says, there are no killing of white farmers or farmers in South Africa. I think that's precise. He's like, there's no killing of farmers or white farmers in South Africa. I'm seeing the clip in my mind's eye.
The last one I'm going to reference, politicsweb.co.za.
That's a good publication.
Ramaphosa still refuses to take action on farm murders. And I just have to highlight because I see a picture here. I think it was written by a black person. Noko Masiba. Okay.
But if you look up that clip, you'll see also as well, if you search that precise quote, you'll just find the media pretty much saying this is what he meant, this is what he meant. I think it was
what a great media protecting the president.
Yeah. But not with other types. If he had claimed something else, they would have fact-checked him into oblivion. Or someone else had claimed something similar. If someone had claimed something similar about another crime phenomenon in South Africa, the media would have jumped on him. So
LGBTQI plus and women, I can tell you now in this country, are priority regardless. Anywhere you go, when politicians are campaigning, when people speak, we're killing our women, and then the LGBTQI plus community has been oppressed. The rest of us, ordinary, especially, black gents and a white gent, hey, we there, bottom of the... Who died? A white African... a black guy, a white guy, they both died. Was there a woman there? Was there gay? No, don't send Peggy Kele. Send someone else.
Yeah.
Sorry, the land issue.
Yeah, yes. So that second one. I think there's the intimate connection between the whole land debate, the political debate around the land issue and farm murders. You know why? because in the land debate, politicians use the land debate to frame farmers as evil. Talk about land thieves, talk about these are the descendants of rapists, these are the descendants of criminals, these sometimes even going as far as calling the ones currently living criminals and thieves and land thieves. So, of course, if you have that type of rhetoric around farmers or X, Y, and Z, they're these evil, Lucifers, satanic, incarnate type of people. It only takes one person to listen to that and say, well, maybe if they're these terrible people, I have to take them out. So I think there's an intimate connection because of the type of rhetoric we encounter within the land issue debate, specifically around the demonization of farmers within that debate as literally just being called land thieves, even though they bought their land legally.
Do you think some of these people killing farmers, farm workers are disgruntled employees or people that have been conditioned through propaganda to be like, no, we're going to get the land back no matter what. And it starts with some of this action. I'm doing it for my forefathers.
Yeah. The thing about motive is it's very difficult to ascertain it within court cases. So, for example, a criminal is rather going to say, well, I did it because of these sympathetic reasons rather than I was motivated by sentence. I was motivated by pure hate and I wanted to murder just for murder's sake. There have been farm murderers that have literally just said, I felt compelled to murder a white farmer, but most human beings or criminals in that scenario is going to think, how can I soften my sentence? Oh, well, here's all the reasons that drove me.
The farmer used to beat me up.
Yeah.
So it's a self-defense.
Doesn't mean that also doesn't happen on farms. That can definitely happen, but ascertaining motive is very difficult because that person is going to say anything just to make their side of the story stronger. So it's very difficult. I wish we could actually do a study in regards to specifically let's say the farm murders that have happened over the past decade. What were the motives? Let's put them in a pie chart and see. That would be fantastic. But it's very difficult specifically because of that human element.
Do you think there might be a chance that some of the farm owners are abusive and maybe some of them it was retaliation because they hurt someone?
That's always possible. I can't sit here and say, no, I don't have the evidence to say that's never happened. But I also can't sit here and say, well, here's the percentage of cases where that happened, or I'm not going to deny that can possibly happen.
Because to boer is hard. It's hard. Not for any race, anyone. It's a tough terrain. It's tough work. Unless you're very rich and you have nice technology and those things. But it's tough. And anyone who's been farming for a long time will know farmers are thick-skinned people and farm workers. And some of them are rough around the edges. Not just white people, black farmers, etc. So if ever someone maybe said that and it's like, well, he was slapping, you're like, look, in that type of space. And that's not unique to farming. There are certain spaces, maybe the taxi industry being another one, where the people there are a bit rough around the edges. The last point. I know we've been speaking for a while. You still have energy?
No, I've got energy. We can go.
Okay.
You can end the conversation when you feel we've reached a nice conclusionary spot, or there's a good place to end.
We'll end with this one. I hope it won't be too long because I think we've covered a lot of the stuff already. I'm going to start off by apologizing. And then if you don't say nice things, I'll take my apology back. I'm going to apologize for maybe misunderstanding what was happening on social media at the time, because you've explained your stance on white genocide, farm murders, and why it's so close to you and what yourself and AfriForum are trying to achieve. I saw Julius Malema getting on a podium like Beyonce, singing and dropping a mic at the EFF's 10-year rally. And look, I've given them kudos. To grow to 10 years is something exemplary. You know, they claim to represent the voices of so many oppressed and exploited and poor black people, of which they do a good job of it. I have to give them that.
I don't think it's impossible to deny that it's a party with a lot of support. It would be clashing with reality to not sit here as like, no, it's all fake.
Correct. And look, they do a lot of good work, man. But I'm not going to speak about that now. There's parts of the EFF that I don't like and that other people don't like. And that's where there's the racial inflammation and almost stoking racial tension even when you don't have to. Understandably, as a tool, you know, you're trying to rile up support from certain people, and you kind of need them to get emotional in a certain way. So they sang "Shoot the Boer," Dubuli Bono. For people that don't know, Dubula is not to kill, Dubula is to shoot. So the direct translation is to shoot the Boer, of which now this comes now to the explanation, and I can do this after you've said your thoughts. The explanation of what that means and what black people explain it to mean. They sing it, the owner of Twitter X, one of the wealthiest men in the world, sometimes the wealthiest man in the world, old Pretoria boys, Branson High gent, Elon Musk goes and tweets. They are killing white people in South Africa. There's a white genocide. He tags Cyril Ramaphosa on Twitter. President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, is not doing anything about it. Don't understand what Elon Musk knows about anything, but I'm like, look, he probably has links to South Africa. There are people that are close to people who spoke to him. I could be Elon Musk and someone's like, they killed someone in Newcastle where I grew up or at Rhodes University where I studied, and I'll get emotional and I'll go on a platform. Someone's like, what's special about Newcastle? I'm like, I'm from there. So maybe someone close to him said that and he decided to tweet. That's me trying to defend Elon. Julius Malema then responds to that and is like, Ubua Masipa. You're talking shit. Direct translation.
Yeah, I saw that.
I then go and I make a video trying to explain some of the nuances around this thing and giving my views. And I also I try to defend, I think, Elon a bit, and I try to defend Julius a bit. And yeah, it didn't work. And it went on to a point where he never said my name, but it almost innuendo, Julius Malema calling me a MacG wannabe, what, I'm a poor unemployed podcaster. So very crass and unnecessary. Goes back to this stoking and provoking for no reason. He could have said something else. He doesn't have to sit with me. Could just be like, I heard someone speaking about me. They don't know what they're talking about. But he decided to almost want me to not like him, like we're fighting. And I was literally trying to defend him. Then AfriForum seemed to, you guys seemed to be happy with Elon tweeting what he tweeted. And in my head, I was like, the guys at AfriForum must be enjoying this. This now becomes propaganda. The reason I'm apologizing is because I'm like, you guys are like, someone is raising this story. Farm murders and maybe, and they tag Cyril. So we've been asking, maybe it's going to take a billionaire living in America for Cyril to want to sit and resolve this thing. But in my head, I was thinking, so the guys at AfriForum are fine with this narrative of white genocide that Elon is pushing here. And because it's Elon Musk and he's rich and there's the international community, this is going to be a great time to now champion AfriForum, raise funding. And I was like, nah, this is nonsense. And with my video, this could have now annoyed you. Like, why would you not maybe ask? And in my head, I'm like, I don't need to ask. You guys are supporting Elon and this nonsense. So I'm apologizing for the misunderstanding. But if it wasn't a misunderstanding, taking my apology back. Julius, in my video, had a prime opportunity for the EFF, for his own political career, for what he's trying to achieve on the African continent, for South Africa at large. He had a prime opportunity. Elon Musk is tweeting, mentioning you. There's a video. The international community is watching. Speak about the EFF and what it's trying to achieve. Speak about South African history. Speak about K1ll The Boer and what it represents. This is your chance to educate where other people are like, I think I like this Malema guy. Wow, that was great. Instead, he decides, Ubua Masipa, fuck you. I'm not gonna respond to white arrogance and you're condescending. And I'm like, it's not even about that. This is a platform. And look, I know a lot of people probably appreciated that. Oh, Julius stands up to a billionaire. Who the hell are you? We don't need you. And I'm like, okay. That was what I saw and took from that. And I'm going to reference NPOs as I close now. I know non-profit organizations, and this breaks my heart, but this is the real world. We have to speak about the real world. There are non-profit organizations that when a woman is murdered and makes headlines, when a gay person is murdered or pressed and makes headlines, they lick their lips. This is now where we're going to make money. This is trending on CNN, on Fox. Did you hear this lady who was gunned down? All the NGOs globally are like, what's happening in South Africa? And then it's like, I'm going to be the spokesperson. I'm going to go in ENCA and Newsroom Africa and SABC News. We have a scourge. Men now, what? And then someone's going to be like, who's that lady? And now I'm being called in America and France. Look, we want to help you guys. You know, we've got some money. We've got a fund. You're like, guys, we just got 500,000. We just got 5 million. And because NPO work is all you're doing, you make a lot of money. And in that moment, I I'd like to say erroneously now, I saw AfriForum being like, this is our chance now to gain international exposure and lengthen it. And that's why I was kind of annoyed. And I was just like, this is not helping. Elon Musk is talking rubbish. Julius is talking rubbish. AfriForum is now also riding this thing, which now inflames this whole thing. And it's like, guys, now we're all fighting again. And we could all have a conversation and sort this thing out. Which is why you and I are sitting here today. For all the other people that couldn't sit and have these nuanced conversations. And anyone who can send this to Elon and send it to Julius. And say, guys, this is actually what was happening. It is not what you guys thought. And yeah, Penuel was also wrong and he's apologizing. And then Ernst got a chance to also be like, Pen, it's fine. We were also maybe wrong.
Yeah, no, when it comes to that issue specifically, I think, well, firstly, it's not the main issue regarding this. I think your instinct there is legit. I think there is a lot of non-profit organizations that thrive on this type of story.
Yeah.
But as I told you in private, and I can put out in public now, we don't get a lot of international funding. I wish we did. We have so for example, to become an AfriForum member, you have to have a South African bank account. So you can't just donate money from all across the world. You can technically if you become a friend of AfriForum, but there is a handful of just people giving a little bit every month. So
it's important to mention why that's important. It's because there's... what's the right term? Anyways, but it's got to do with money laundering and money from illegal trades and stuff, which is why there's sensitivity around just getting 10 million euros randomly landing in your account.
You need to be able to show where did this money come from. You can't just say they found it in your couch and it's fine, it's normal. So when
who had foreign currency in their couch? Sorry.
So a good example, if you want to see how much AfriForum is being funded, get some perspective on how much we're being funded internationally, just go check out our, what's it called, a Safeguard a Farm initiative. If you type in AfriForum Safeguard a Farm, you should be able to find that page where the donation page. And you can see how much has been donated. It's an initiative specifically where people internationally, but also domestically, can donate towards us helping make farms safer by giving farmers radios and training. But that fund, last time I checked, was I think about a month ago, only had about 30,000 Rand in it. Now, anyone that understands exchange rate understands like if people are giving money from outside, that's not a lot of money. So it's not a fundraising opportunity for AfriForum. And as I explained earlier, do you really think someone, and this comes down to you trusting that everything I say about how my soul works and what goes on in my mind is true and that I'm not just putting on an act.
Sure.
But do you really think someone as connected to the issue personally, culturally, someone that is deeply touched by this crime phenomenon and has experienced the effects of it through friends and family that have been affected, do you really think I would be able to sleep at night if I was knowing I was just working for an organization that's exploiting this issue that I think is serious and real and just exploiting it to make money? I would become an alcoholic that day. I would probably quit my job and can't believe I worked for such an organization. So, but that, like I said, that's up to people actually trusting that what I say is true. Sure. I can only give you my side of the story and my perspective, but I can't, unfortunately, let you see into my soul. But when it comes to international attention, let's make that circle a bit bigger, the whole issue of international attention around the issue of farm murders. I can't emphasize enough how much AfriForum would prefer to keep this a local issue, keep it within the borders of South Africa. But when everyone that you approach to try and talk about the issue, to bring awareness about the issue, tells you, F off, we don't want to talk to you, you are propagandists, this is a non-issue. The president of the country says there are no murdering of white farmers in South Africa. Then you have to try and get international attention, and you see the response is exactly how that works. So AfriForum firstly focuses domestically on raising awareness on the issue. Powers that be ignore us, say it's not a non-issue, go away. We send 2 people internationally to raise awareness. Suddenly we're mentioned in Parliament by the president saying, come back home. It's 2018. He said, come chat to us. We want to find a solution.
Doesn't that piss you off?
It pisses me off very deeply.
We've got that problem in this country. It happened during the struggle.
Yeah.
It happened during the struggle where things only started getting serious when international. It happens, as you're saying, even now with so many issues where you've got a government, even you've got a government that only listens when other parts of the world are talking.
When their prestige is affected.
A township is not getting service delivery. They write emails, they protest, then they start burning schools, and then BBC and CNN. Then all of a sudden, Parliament is like, hey, we need to sort out. Doesn't that... Anyway, sorry. Please continue. Sorry. So then
but that's
they
my
speak
point.
in Parliament that you guys must come back. We'll resolve.
Yeah.
We can sit down because now we're looking horrible too.
But that's to demonstrate... AfriForum doesn't want... We'd rather be spending the money we're paying on, for example, plane tickets to do an international liaison campaign, rather spend that money on safeguarding farms and making farming communities safer. But our two-pronged approach means we also need to be spreading awareness so people know what's going on. And if we're failing domestically because the door is just being shut in our face, well, then we have to go to other sources or other people that will actually listen to us. Yeah. But I can guarantee you it's not a preferable situation. We have to be paying international plane tickets, international accommodation, all these types of things to go overseas to get attention for a local issue. We'd much rather financially and practically rather be focused on resolving this internally. But if the door is being slammed in your face constantly, all the people that you approach for, let's find a solution to this problem, so just chase you away. But the moment you go internationally, they say, oh, come back, let's talk. It exposes the whole charade, it exposes the whole scam. It's not about caring about the issue. Yeah. It's about, if you don't make us look bad, we don't care about the issue. And that's where things like, for example, Elon Musk talking about it. Now the whole world is fixated on South Africa. I just want to, again, in the interest of putting the facts on the table, again, we can disagree on it. As far as I'm aware, he never called it a white genocide. He talked about genocidal rhetoric. There's a difference. Genocidal rhetoric is rhetoric that calls for genocide with genocidal intent to murder an entire group of people. And the flip side of the coin would be a genocide happening at this moment. I'm open to the idea that anyone can send me evidence of that claim, Elon Musk claiming that there is currently a genocide going on. And to that, I'll say absolutely not true, and I will not spread that lie.
Let me just fix it quickly.
Sure.
They are openly pushing for genocide of white people in South Africa. That's the tweet.
Yeah.
So that's the white genocide.
That's genocidal rhetoric, to sum it up. That's what he's saying.
Of white people. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, please continue.
That's what he's saying. But, and we can have, like I said, we can discuss whether that's warranted or not. But there is international attention. One of the most famous people in the world is actually putting attention on it. What happens in the aftermath? Suddenly, many South Africans are talking about the issue. Suddenly, we are debating the issue. Suddenly, we are having conversations like this. I can guarantee you...
That's also sad.
Similar conversations.
That's also sad as well.
It's tragic. But I can guarantee you, we're speaking on a public platform, but conversations like this happened because of that. And that's the sad situation where I actually challenge people in positions of power that can actually bring about change in South Africa to talk to organizations like AfriForum here locally. Then we don't have to rely on international attention and the international spotlight and for the world to take notice. If people actually gave us the time of day to state our case in South Africa. But also there's another thing added to that. As I explained earlier, there's a faction of people from all backgrounds that seem to be invested in the idea that we need to ensure that people think that AfriForum says things that they do not, that they are an illegitimate organization that are spreading propaganda, that they're extremists, and we can't afford that people actually listen and realize, I might disagree with many of the things that they're saying, but they're being reasonable. They are bringing facts to the table and we can discuss the facts. That's all I want. That's all my organization wants. And like I said, as an AfriForum representative and as a South African, I can tell you, and as I said, I don't have any hard evidence I can put on the table now to completely hammer it home, but I can guarantee you that we'd rather sort this out domestically than internationally. It costs a mountain of money and it just doesn't bring in any money. But the attention itself has effects domestically that actually help us address the issue and get the issue on the agenda table. Because now suddenly politicians have to react to it, and they are being pressured to add that the conversation is now discussed on media platforms, where if we had not gone internationally, or if there was not an international spotlight, many of those media outlets would just say, "Nah, this is a non-issue. We're not going to talk about it."
Hey, you speak well, man. You're making me reconsider my membership.
No, but Penuel, thank you for being big enough to say, well, here's a mistake that I made, but let me also explain myself. When you make a mistake, it doesn't mean you have to now come groveling and say, now I owe you 10 favors and I'll make it up to you. Like, no, just be able to say, maybe I had a different perspective on it, or this was my thinking at the time, and I now see the difference. And like I told you now, I can completely understand. My English is running out. I've got
the English data bundles are running out, Baba. Afrikaans is coming in strong.
In Afrikaans, the word is begrip. I have understanding for it. I understand in that situation, seeing the rhetoric going on, seeing the polarization, the heightening of tension, having that reaction makes complete sense. But from my side, as I've been saying throughout this whole conversation, for this to be a successful conversation, I have to be successful in putting as many facts on the table, and then people can decide
for themselves
and discuss for themselves. My mission here is not to now come convince Penuel that he has to apologize, or convince Penuel he has to become a member of AfriForum again, or that you have to make concessions, or they have to admit that Ernst is right and you are wrong. No.
Yeah, because Ernst is always wrong, just officially.
I'm wrong about many things. I'm not right about...
I'm kidding. I appreciate you coming to explain the nuances. It makes me sad that there are almost always nuances, and that we almost always need to address and engage them, because a lot of these matters are complicated. You spoke about having a soul, and I just wanted to make a note.
Let's explore that. Let's see if you do.
There are people that don't have souls, or have souls that are, what's the right way to put it? That are conflicted, that are maybe not as pure. And they thrive off the idea of, I can make money from these things. We see it with energy now. There are people licking their lips. Every time we hear there's load shedding, stage 6, there are people that are like, yep, I need this for my solar company. We've gotten the IPP license. I mean, if the South African government fixes Eskom and load shedding, I'm not going to make money. I'm about to make a lot of money. Similar people have the same ideology with private security. If crime were to go down, I can't make money from my private security company. I sponsor the local school. People know me. I'm rich. I drive a Ferrari in the neighborhood because my private security guys work here. To a point where you start wondering if some of them don't send people to commit crimes to make sure that business is still going.
Construction mafia in South Africa.
Construction mafia is a big one. Now I'm thinking even with the farm murders, someone was saying this to me recently. I'm not sure who it was. If it was Waras or someone else. They were saying the amount of money that's potentially being made in farming security. You know,
that was Dan in your conversation.
It was Dan Quarter. Our boy Dan. That there may be some people who are like, this is a great opportunity. And I really hope, if there are people out there making money, selling guns, drone surveillance, you know, etc., I hope they don't go to the extent of sending people to cause harm to promote their business. Hey, do you have security? You know, I had a fish and chip shop back in 2012. It was called Penuel's Fish and Chips.
You mentioned it last time as well.
Back in 2012, and the night before I opened officially, these guys, I'm not going to mention the security company because maybe it wasn't them. They come and they pitch security. They're like, look, we have an alarm system, what. I'm like, oh, no, I don't need it. I'm good. I'd been setting up that shop for a couple of weeks, shop fitting, etc. The night before I opened, these guys come here. We do alarm systems, what. I'm like, I don't need it. The following morning, I get to my shop and it had been broken into and my things had been stolen. Not a lot. Enough, my cash register and a few things, enough things had been stolen for me to be like, hey, maybe, and I literally called the guys. Because in my head, I'm like, it could be them. And I'm like, this is like extortion. This is like the mafia. It's like, well, if you're not going to pay us to protect you, you're going to see yourself being a victim of crime. All the shops next to me are not broken into. Well, look, it's probably because they have our alarm systems. And you're like, okay. It's fine. I'll sign up. Guess this is the cost of business. So I hope there are people out there, because I know some capitalists are really dark human beings. You know, it's money over everything.
They're human, whether they're Marxist or capitalist or whatever.
I don't know if they're human. I don't know if they're human. It's money beyond humanity, by any means. And I hope, even if they exist, they are not sending people to commit heinous crimes in the pursuance. We see it with pharmaceutical companies. Some of these people don't see human beings. They don't mind the side effects. They don't mind. They'll tell you, oh, the rate of deaths from this thing has gone down, so we're doing well. You're like, you can't speak like that. People took your drug and some people died, and you're like, oh, we're doing better. You're like, that's crazy. So I hope some of these people are not out there. I just wanted to make that.
I wanted to agree that with any ideology, you're going to get dark people that have dark hearts, that have ill intent and are malicious and don't have empathy or feeling for other people. But what I meant by they're human is that, as Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, the line between good and evil runs through every man's heart, and no man is willing to cut out a piece of his own heart. So,
jeez, who said that?
Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He's
Solzhenitsyn,
Soviet dissident.
Of course, he is Solzhenitsyn.
Yeah,
there's a line that runs between
the line between good and evil runs through the hearts of every man, and no man is willing to cut out a piece of his own heart.
Jeez.
So any ideology will find people with dark intentions, people that have bad intentions with bad hearts, whether they be capitalist, Marxist, socialist, whatever.
Sure.
So that might come when you say, like, even some of X ideology has bad people. I'm like, yeah, of course it does. They're people.
Yeah.
Humanity has the line between good and evil, not just in their own hearts, but through humanity itself. There's this line, and we choose between it every day. You and me, everyone here, everyone chooses between good and evil every day, and we can only strive towards choosing good every time. I don't believe, except for Jesus Christ, there's no man out there that's always good all the time and always makes the right decision.
Do you think we have to choose good and evil is the default?
I think sin is the default. I think we talked about, last time the intro to our conversation was human nature. Yeah. I said human nature is sinful because we're fallen beings. We will always be tempted towards sin.
Sure.
All we have our responsibility is to firstly be aware of that fact, and secondly to fight that temptation, but not to beat yourself up if you fall to that temptation. You just have to be better. You have to continue to be better and improve, but be aware of your fallen nature and your failure sometimes to stick to an ideal, but strive towards that ideal.
Let's close this thing. Let me defend my boy, Julius Malema. Jeez, why am I
defending you get a good
Julius?
word in the next press conference.
Maybe
he apologizes and says, I just want to give an apology.
Let's not put any money on that. You may lose everything. So on the topic of nuances, I'm going to try and defend Julius a little bit. And then I've got a small question for you. I think it's short, and then we can close it off.
Sure.
The nuance is, as you're speaking about human nature and those things, it's a question I asked you straight on. I also asked Meneer Karel Boshoff. Are there racists in Oranje? Without a doubt, there are racists here, but Oranje is not a racist town, and the ideology is not based on racism. Does the EFF potentially have radical people, racist black people, which many black people are like, black people cannot be racist? I believe black people can be racist. I believe the EFF has a lot of racist black people who probably hate white people. I remember under Donald Trump's era, there was something along the lines of, not all Trump supporters are racist, but it just so happens that all the racists support Trump. I don't know how true that is, because I liked Donald Trump, by the way. But you can believe that black people that hate white people would probably lean towards Julius Malema and the EFF. But that's not to say all EFF members hate white people. And so if it's going to happen that there are EFF members, whether they were real EFF members or people wearing EFF t-shirts, singing Dubuli Bonu outside Senegal, that's not nice. But I have to say that it doesn't represent all EFF people, I'd like to think. And I don't know if he ever responded to that, whether it was Ndlovu or Malema, on condemning that type of behavior, because it's inappropriate. No. If they didn't, that's sad. But on behalf of good EFF members that I know it doesn't represent all of them, and it represents those people.
Yeah, it wasn't, but this is a very technicality. It wasn't the Dubla Ibunu, it was the chant, kill the Boer, kill the farmer.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That is very unfortunate, but I don't want it to be an EFF thing because of a rot in a certain. It's like there are racist white people that are members of AfriForum, but AfriForum is not a racist organization, and I think that's important. The second one was Julius Malema and the call and being asked to pledge to never call for the mass killing of white people. This one is very difficult. This one's very difficult, and it's not for me to defend him. It's for me to explain the complexity of human history and the platform and the legacy that Julius Malema comes from. The ANC Youth League, the ANC, the people that had groomed him, people like Jacob Zuma, etc., that come from apartheid, the struggle, being imprisoned, the history of black oppression, where you're asking someone who's meant to be a voice of black people and oppressed black people and black people that are trying to find their place in the world and liberation to be like, you will never call for the... And his argument is, I'm not calling for it today, but if ever in my representation of black people, as with the ANC and Umkhonto weSizwe at some point, where they felt compelled to pick up arms, I think he was trying to say, if ever we feel threatened to that point and we have to defend ourselves, I may call for the mass killing. Maybe I'm being like the media and I'm getting into Julius Malema's head, but I'm speaking on behalf of so many other black people that would applaud him saying something like that or refusing to pledge. It's him saying, because of the history of my people, I am not Nelson Mandela. I am not going to come here on a platform and be like, never and never again shall it. It's like, I'm not that guy. If ever we are pushed into a corner, I want my people that I represent to know. Almost in the same vein, and you weren't saying this, but you were saying if people go for the fear clear, white Afrikaners may not be smiling and let's laugh, and they'll be very, very upset because it's something very personal to us. I think Julius was also saying this is very personal, and I'm not going to commit here. I'm not calling for it today. You never heard me calling for it. We can debate Dublipun, etc. But if ever I get to a point, I don't want you coming back and say, but you pledged. No, I'm not going to do that. And I'd like to think that's where the stance was. It wasn't to necessarily be like, guys, one day it's coming. One day I'm going to call. I don't think, that's not how I read that moment. But that's just my view.
Well, I think a theme that is, our last conversation had many of these themes, these golden threads that kind of stood out of defining that conversation. And I remember them when we were talking, like, we talked about this last time, we touched on this theme. One of the big themes of our conversation today was the theme of putting a perspective on the table and giving the responsibility over to the audience to actually consider it and debate it in their own minds.
Because there are facts. People can go and watch, read, and be like, Penuel is just blowing hot air. That guy never said that.
Because we can sit here now, we can talk for another 3 hours.
Sure.
My English is not going to last, but we can talk for potentially
and the water's
another
finished.
hour.
I think the English is in the water.
We can sit here for another hour and talk just about this point. We can even strongly disagree.
Sure.
But you've put the perspective on the table. You gave me the opportunity to put from an AfriForum perspective on things like the old South African flag, the Vierkleur, farm murders, etc., all the issues that we discussed.
Yeah.
You gave me the opportunity to put the perspective on the table. And there were things I know that you could have stopped me and said, we have to stop there. And until we sort this point out, we're not continuing the conversation. But then we would have had this type of conversation. We would have had a little fraction of a conversation, but that's what happens with debates. That's why I said, let's not create the expectation of a debate, because when you're playing like a football match and you're playing a debate and there's a point where you feel, but I have to win now, then you stop the conversation there and said, okay, we have to sort this out now. And then none of these perspectives, none of these ideas would have been on the table. It would have been to speak metaphorically, would have been an impoverished conversation. Yeah. There wouldn't have been so many things for people to think about afterwards and consider. And that's what I really appreciated from the feedback we got from the previous conversation, is there was this common theme in so many of the comments, especially in the YouTube section, where they said, something along the lines of, this conversation gave me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Not Ernst is great or Penuel is great or Ernst is wrong and Penuel is wrong. It's like, this conversation gave me a lot to put at the back of my mind, and I have to come back to it. Some people even admitted watching the conversation again and again because they didn't absorb everything the first time. There's just so much there. And that's what you want. That's what you want. Not everything has to be a debate. Not everything has to be, until we resolve this issue, we're not going in. That's how politicians speak. And don't do that. These types of conversations, as I understand them, their value lies in, let's put as many perspectives and facts and things for people to consider on the table, and make the audience, they're not here in the room with us, but they are consuming what we're saying. They're thinking about it. They're probably going to be thinking after this is published about it in the week. And that's what I want. That's what I want. I want people to think. And maybe even if one person listens to this conversation and thinks, as you did, where I didn't think about it that way. This actually gives me a fresh perspective on what AfriForum is doing, or what Ernst is saying, or even what you mentioned there now, what Penuel was saying. It gives me a fresh perspective on what Penuel thinks about these issues. And that conversation was a success because you actually moved someone's mind from point A to point B, from being sure about something and thinking, maybe I have to reconsider some of this. Maybe I come to the same conclusion after this thought journey, but maybe you don't. Maybe you come to a new conclusion. Then you've grown as a person.
That's so dope. The relationship between AfriForum and the United Nations and your visit there and what it was about.
So this was last year, December. So I went alone. First time AfriForum has sent someone alone. So I went there for two reasons. The one was the previous year, me and Ernst Roots were at CERD, so this is the Committee for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, and we handed in a report on racially discriminatory legislation in South Africa. And then they invited us. Last year, they said, you hand in this report. Would you also like a speaking turn when we now convene? Because talking under correction with the years, I think every 5 years or every 4 years, countries are reviewed for how they are fighting racial discrimination in their country. But anyone can submit reports and information to this review process. So South Africa's turn was last year. So the South African delegation sat there, stated their case, gave their answers to everything. And AfriForum was given a speaking opportunity as well as an NGO from South Africa.
Thank you.
And no, that was the first one. That was behind closed doors. So my presentation was not public, and I couldn't post any pictures because there's so much discussed, and there was a request from the UN. Is like, these things we're doing basically conflict resolution and evaluation, everything within this closed space, within our capacity as CERD. This is not a public spectacle. This is not here for you to now have the world come see everything that we're chatting here about. But anyway, that was the gist of it. And then the second opportunity was at the Minority Rights Forum. So 2 years ago, me and Ernst Roots were there. He did a presentation there. NGOs from all across the world speak about, here are some of the pressing issues from our field of focus that is affecting our country. So you can't speak of all the issues in your country. You talk about the issues that you are addressing in your country. You get 2 minutes to give some summary. And last year, Ernst Roots now, I didn't mention it in this conversation. He now moving up in the world. He now works for the Solidarity Movement.
Who?
Ernst Roots. So
he's left AfriForum?
Not left, he's been promoted.
He's a sellout. Ernst Roots is a sellout. That's going to be the title of this thing. No, I'm kidding. So he's been promoted to Solidarity.
He's been promoted to, he's moved up to the Solidarity Movement. So AfriForum falls under the Solidarity Movement. So he's gone up a layer.
Okay.
So with me now at AfriForum, with Ernst Roots no longer there, I handle that type of opportunity. So I went to the Minority Rights Forum and I gave a presentation as well there. But because it's a minority rights forum, I speak of many of the issues affecting minorities in South Africa. If they give me an hour, I'll talk an hour about all the things affecting everyone in South Africa, every little issue. But you got 2 minutes, so you talk about the things your organization addresses. And like I said, there's hundreds of organizations from all across the world. And South Africa can send multiple, if there's organizations in South Africa that care about this issue that affects a specific minority group, whether that be cultural, linguistic, racial, they can go speak there. But AfriForum, we got that opportunity there, but we don't have any. We are registered at ECOSOC, which is, I can't remember what it stands for, but it's pretty much a network of NGOs all across the world that pretty much focus on my English is really running out here. That focus on a myriad of issues, but particularly from AfriForum side is minority issues. But you can go check out more specifically what they do. But we don't get funding from the UN. We're not a UN organization. We just go to the English is really running. I'm thinking of geleentheid, opportunities. We go to the opportunities, for example, like the Minority Rights Forum, and because we also submit reports on many issues in South Africa. And because we take part in these opportunities, you can then become a member, for example, of networks like ECOSOC.
ECOSOC, the United Nations Economic and Social Council. Apparently, I think is what it. Okay. Now that's all from me. I don't know if you have anything else to close with. I want to send greetings to my lovely wife. Thank you so much for a happy marriage.
Oh, thank you for all the support. And she married me before I went on, or she agreed to. When did? I have to make sure my timeline's correct now. When did we get our episode out last year? Was it in the first half of the year?
I think it was before you got married. I think it was the episode, eh?
I think it was before I had my 250,000 views on YouTube. She already said...
She still believed in you.
Yes, yeah.
That's beautiful. Okay.
No, I'm just joking. She's a wonderful wife. And I really... I like ending on a shout out to her. But I also want to end on a message, and that's specifically for an election year. Is I want to emphasize that what I said at the beginning of diversify your solutions and portfolio and your change portfolio. Don't write off elections. Take part in elections. It's important. Local level, every level. But do more than just that. You can't relegate yourself to one avenue of change. You have to do as much as you can, but as Flabay says, do what you can with what you have. Don't try to do the impossible. Do what is within your means and within your limits, but you have to be doing something. Nobody has an excuse for, I can't do anything. In no way, shape or form, I'm just completely full. Well, I've never met that type of person, but then you are probably living your best life. You're probably a billionaire. If you've got no time, not even for 20 minutes to give to a cause, you're just busy building your billionaire empire. Sure, okay, but you probably have an excuse. But the normal person out there, you have something to give, even if it's small. And don't write off something as too small. There's this idea of the tyranny of just. It's not my idea. It's the idea of a guy called Jay Burden. He says, we live in a time of the tyranny of just, where everyone is told you're just a man, you're just a normal person, you're just a individual, you're just this, and this, which contains the implication of who you can't do anything. You're not a hero. You're not a man of history. You're not a big hero like all these, and you point to all the heroes from the past. You're just Penuel. You're just Ernst. You're just a normal person. And it makes people think that they can't be heroic in their own way. It makes them think that they can't make a difference because they're just X or they're just Y. And you need to escape that mentality. You're not just this or just this. You have the capacity to be heroic, even in your own local sense. To be a good father is heroic. To be a contributing member to your community is heroic. To represent your people or your culture or your organization or your community is heroic. To do the right thing even when nobody is watching is heroic.
Meneer Ernst Van Zyl, as the English bundles run out. Bye, dankie. I always waardeer your kuiers very much. And I look forward to us sitting down again. Thank you for coming to the Penuel Show.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.